gentlemen, welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I'm coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto. And as always, I am joined across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing?
This week's good, and it's actually nice and sunny. I feel like last time we were talking, it was cloudy, and but today is a nice sunny day.
There we go. Yeah, it was sunny here too for some reason. It's not allowed. Just kidding. May the 6th be with you, by the way. This week, our eyes are all on screen. Phantom Menace in theaters, Acolyte sneak peek, and a brand new trailer. The Paths of Morgan and Barriss in Tales of the Empire, and of course, a look back on all 3 seasons of the Bad Batch. And to help us make the jump, the full Podcastariat, we got some help. We got Dom out in Underworld North Annex playing with lightsabers. How you doing today, Dom?
I'm good. I'm ready to keep my eye on the screen.
There we go.
Just think about all these great shows.
Yeah.
Do you take your eye off the screen? You never take your eye off the screen.
Occasionally, just for just for
good for your health.
Ish and giggles,
There you go. And of course, coming to us from me, also across the continent, the third corner of the continent there. Yeah. Omar, the negotiator. How's it going, Omar?
Hey there, everybody. So happy to be back on the show. Really excited to talk Star Wars after just an entire week of news and watching movies on the big screen. Just super excited to talk Star Wars.
There we go. Yeah, it's a good weekend to talk about Star Wars. We had a good weekend. We'll get into a little bit of that in just quite a bit. Not just quite a bit. That doesn't make sense. In just a bit. I can speak words. In just a bit. First off, get some plugs out of the way. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Iron Canon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Yeah, I get just got all the fun stuff. All the social medias right there. Yeah, I'm gonna quickly jump ahead to Tractor Beam. What else am I doing here? Yeah, sorry, I got discombobulated for a second. 4 screens. I'm so confused. Why are there 4 people on here? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, Tractor Beam this past
Matthew, I just have to say, you wouldn't last an hour in the asylum where they raised me.
I know. I just, for a fortnight. Maybe for a fortnight I'd last. There you go. Yeah, so Tractor Beam this past Wednesday, Kurosawa and I on every Wednesday talk about the comics that came out the past that day. Of course, this coming Wednesday, we're also going to talk about the comics that came out on Saturday, free comic book day. So check that out right here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel and all the other places you get your socials. Yeah, that's 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific right here. Also back up to some more plugs. Got a few more plugs here. Here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, we've got YouTube memberships, we've got super chats. So please feel free to comment below. If you comment normally, I will try and get your comment in there. If you super chat us, you're guaranteed to get your comment in there. So please do.
What if you superior chat?
If you superior chat, then that'll be amazing. You've just made up a whole category of chatting.
I will try and juggle something, maybe. I don't know.
There we go.
So, I gotta figure out how to do that.
So if you super chat while juggling, we'll even show. We won't necessarily show you on screen, but I please do send that in. That'll be impressive. Dom's playing with his snacks there. He's got an idea. Cereal. There we go. Also the Discord server, the Star Wars Underworld Discord. Got some conversations going on there. The link in the description below. Click on that if you want to get in and chat away. Joel, I think there's some things happening in the Discord these days.
Yes, last Sunday, so last night, we played the Lego Star Wars Fortnite for quite a long time, and it was a lot of fun. And on Tuesday we'll be playing the Star Wars Fall Guys. On Tuesday at 6 o'clock my time. That'd be 9 o'clock Eastern. So yeah, join us. Get some Star Wars skins and play Fall Guys and do Han Solo falling down. So yeah, that will be a lot of fun. Oh, and Matthew, by the way, before I forget, this Wednesday on Tractor Beam, is it happening? Is he going there? Is it finally time?
Probably.
Is he finally going there?
Probably. He's probably going.
Finally going.
Darth Vader is going to Exegol, is what we're talking about. Just putting that out. Bit of a spoiler, but even I know that. How do I know that? Because solicits and spoilers and stuff. Yeah, be sure to check.
very invested.
It's on, it's on the.
Yeah,
This-
Greg Pak's whole comic run has been pretty fantastic. It's been together. So anyway, two last plugs to get out of the way. I promise. Our buddy Dan and his band F105, F1053 Baby Makes 3 mix dropped on Saturday. Check that out on Spotify and Apple and YouTube and wherever you get music. It's a pretty good jam. It's a vibe. Check it out. And also on the Rayside channel here on the network, Hannah Rayside, our friend, interviewed Gavin Bouquet, who had a hand in behind the scenes of the whole prequel trilogy. Getting got a good hour-long interview, chatting all about behind the scenes on the prequels. So check that out. We're living in prequel heaven, enjoying it. That's the plugs. Because here's a segue. Speaking of prequel paradise.
Yes, and now I can take it away. I think we have all here, and I checked, have seen The Phantom Menace in theaters re-release sometime this weekend. And let's just get right to it. So, in a little bit of delicious irony, I'm going to hand it over to Dominic first. Dominic, what was your big takeaway rewatching The Phantom Menace again during your latest rewatch?
My biggest takeaway was that the pod race is a spectacular time for a nap. No hate to the pod race, no shade to the pod race. That was just weirdly, that was the moment where my body shut down for a few minutes during the movie. We were like, we're too tired to watch and enjoy this movie we've seen 100 times before. So literally from the like bing bing boom, like from that moment until Skywalker wins, I was like out cold. And like just like those moments where like I remember bing bing bah, and he wins as like I was just missing a whole chunk of the movie.
Wow.
But it was great fun to see it. It's always fun to see a Star Wars movie on the big screen. It was great fun to see it with an excited audience that was having fun. Having fun with the parts of the movie that are truly great, having fun with the parts of the movie that are a little bit silly, and just, happy to be there celebrating Star Wars. We haven't had a new Star Wars movie in a really long time. And so these moments are these re-releases are kind of a chance to recapture a little bit of that energy. And I feel like, because they did it with Rogue One for Andor, they did it with Return of the Jedi last year for the 40th, and we're not to 50 yet, 40th anniversary. And they did it for Phantom Menace. And I feel like there was like a special energy to the Phantom Menace ones. Nice. And I think it was like the younger audiences, people that grew up with those movies were kind of like game to come out and support them. Not in the sense that like anybody didn't enjoy seeing Return of the Jedi on the big screen. We went and saw Empire on the big screen two days later at a local screening, and it was great fun. And we'd seen A New Hope on the big screen earlier this year. And so like these cinematic experiences are like, they're part of it, but there was something special about this one because it was a movie that doesn't usually get re-released. So I feel like I think like there was something special in the energy of the theater, in all of that stuff. So just a real fun time, and kind of recapturing that energy that I think we'll feel in a couple of years when we're back for a proper new Star Wars movie.
Energy. It's a young 25-year-old. Yeah. Omar, over to you. What was your big takeaway or reaction after your latest rewatch in the theaters?
I mean, I love the experience of it. Just being in a movie theater to see a Star Wars film is always just such a great time for all. There were cheers, there were laughs, there were a lot of laughs. I had a really good, energetic audience. But yeah, no, I guess something that I just took away from just the movie itself is the fact that I it's something I haven't really thought about too much until this screening, but there are these really short scenes in The Phantom Menace where they say what they need to say, and then it's almost like they have somewhere to be. They just end immediately. And there sometimes you have these scenes that go in like one after another, and it's like rapid fire just information that George is trying to throw at you all at once. and yet still, even with scenes like that, it's still a movie that can drag. So, I really enjoy just the experience of it. But yeah, no, that's pretty much kind of been how it has felt rewatching some, at least the earlier prequels, in my opinion. But still, I had a really good time. I really enjoyed it. I think my favorite little chuckle that I got out of the screening was when Anakin said, "Oh, Master Qui-Gon, I don't want to be a problem." There's just the person next to me just cracked up laughing, and just in hindsight, like, yeah, that kid's gonna be a problem one day. But yeah,
He was, in fact, a
he
problem.
was in fact a problem. But yeah, no, had a really great time with it.
That's great. That's great. Matthew, what about you? What was your big takeaway from the Phantom Menace after this latest rewatch?
Yeah, a few things. I mean, I should have jabbed Dom in the shoulder when he was taking a nap there, but enjoy the pod race. Basically, strike how trying to think if you're. I was struck by how serious I feel the film is. I talk about it being an adult film masquerading as a kid's film. Talk about it being, we got the goofy, definitely fun, weird parts, and the weird parts I think are also great. Being a prequelist as I am, but also, that everything is so much of what George is saying in terms of destiny, in terms of the power of evil to just seed in there and seep in there, and the dark side, the shroud of the dark side to fall. It's already in there. Even reading Greg Pak's Phantom Menace comic and then coming to this screening was a real, I don't want to say eye opener, but definitely set the tone, set the mood, as I thought it would, to look at Anakin's story as it's the start of the rise of Darth Vader, and in part, but also the dawn, the dusk of the Jedi, and the dusk of the Republic, if I can put it that way. And it was a richer experience, and just being older watching this and having thought through everything. Of course, I watched it maybe 2 years ago, but now, I mean, still thinking through things so much. It was a very rich experience, counterbalanced by someone sitting to my left, smirking at all of Jake Lloyd's performances. I'm like, okay, I guess there's still people. We're still going to do that. I got to expect that. It's going to happen, but what can you do about it? It was fun. It was a great thing. Usually I like, if I'm watching a new film, I like it pretty quiet, but in these circumstances, it's going to be fun and a joyful and a good party.
Which is hilarious, considering we went and saw it with our friend Ash, who I think has been on this show.
Yeah.
And Ash was quoting along with the movie.
Yeah.
So I had to sit between Matt and Ash as a buffer of like, one person wants absolute quiet, no speaking, no sign, nobody's even allowed to laugh at a joke. And then Ash was like, sitting there quoting along with the movie.
Good thing I didn't hear it.
But the other great stuff was the audience, like the moments the audience reacts to.
Yeah.
You think what they're going to be, and in a lot of ways they are. It is. But what was interesting in our theater, I don't know if this was the same in other theaters, but people really found it funny whenever Qui-Gon said he wasn't there to free slaves. So like he says, I didn't come all this way to free slaves, and the audience bursts out laughing. And then subsequently, when he says to Shmi, like, I really didn't come all this way to free slaves, everybody's laughing. And it is kind of funny, because when you stop and think about it, it's like, here is like the answer to everything you could have ever asked for in Anakin and Shmi's situation. Here is this, superhuman being supposedly coming down with his laser sword who could rescue you. And he's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm just here from some spaceship parts. Then I'm going to GTFO. Like, I'm not here for anything else.
Right.
Audience found that very funny. And then there was a good moment at the end of the movie when Palpatine says to Padme, together we shall restore peace and prosperity to the galaxy.
Yeah,
and
my dad reacted to that one too.
Some dude at the back of the theater goes, lies!
That was great. That was a good one.
Yeah.
It was good.
So,
Yeah, Matthew. I talked about this off screen, but I think there is something interesting, and I think something. I mean, I don't know if everyone's like this, but I know I'm like this a lot. Where we don't rewatch a lot of these things often. I feel like we're always so busy with these things, and I'm like, I think it's interesting to rewatch them after a while. It's like. I'm not saying people's opinions are going to dramatically change in like 2 or 3 years per se, but I always think it's like, well, what is Phantom Menace like after reading these books? Or what are, have I changed as a person to where like, oh, I'm noticing different things now, positive or negative, whatever. And I think it's good to rewatch these older installments of Star Wars every now and then, just to kind of either remind yourself about why you love them, or even just kind of maybe get a different perspective. Like us at 12 is not us at almost 30, at least for me. I'm almost at 30. I'm getting old. Well, I was 4 when 99 when 90 Phantom Menace came out, so I didn't even get to see it in theaters. So, but I guess I'll give my takeaways from the rewatch. First little one. Shmi and Qui-Gon, they got chemistry, man. There's some moments where I feel like Shmi's looking at Qui-Gon and going like, husband material here. That really is Anakin's mom and dad right there. They got
touch, like a shoulder touch.
Yeah,
I noticed this time around, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that something? But
yeah, so that's my little takeaway. My bigger takeaway is something Matthew and I talked about. The Jedi Council actually does take the Sith threat seriously. I always feel like people have gone on record like, oh, they didn't do anything. They just like told Qui-Gon, you're nuts, and go away. No, I mean they want him to go to Naboo. Like, no, draw this guy out, figure it out, dude. This could be something big going on. And I just feel like that was the first time I really noticed that moment. It's like, oh yeah, like makes me feel like this is the key we need to unraveling the mystery of the Sith. So they're taking it more seriously than I think people give it credit for. So that was my big takeaway. But
they're understandably skeptical, but they respect Qui-Gon enough to say, okay, well, if you think this is right, go for it, figure it out, that kind of thing. So yeah, like, I mean, the thing you often say, Joel, our perceptions of the Jedi Council are one thing, the actual text that George gave us is often another thing. That being said, the thing I want to just quickly say, though, is given the fan interaction, it's the McLuhan thing we always say, the content is the audience. So yes, in part our perception is just how we interpret something. It's always our perception of the story, to the extent that that's true or not. And George's authorial intent, how much does that matter? We can debate that. But it also just struck how memed this film is. Everything with Jar Jar is such a meme. Everything with Anakin is a bit of a meme, and that's just simply part of what the film is now, and that's always going to be true for fiction films. So I mean, also that's part of watching the theaters. That's the first time I've seen it in the theater since 1999, and so very different experience.
Oh, I'm sure it's always different experience watching it on our couches. So there's that. I'm just gonna put this here for a few seconds.
Speaking of How I Met Your Mother.
Speaking of that,
with that off screen. Sorry,
but
I just finished my How I Met Your Mother rewatch. So, anyways,
speaking of screens, actually, I'm gonna throw this to Matthew because I'm actually curious about this.
Yeah.
You actually re-saw Empire Strikes Back in theater, am I correct?
Yes.
What was your big takeaway from rewatching that film in theater before we get to the other thing? Just kind of.
So the big thing is so. Dom and I, we sat in the very first row, and one of the things that did was literally bring us up close to the faces of the characters. So I was thinking about Leia as a character more, and especially, I mean, part of the thing is with Han, right? Has that aged poorly? Has that aged well? And just thinking about where she is in her interactions with him and how that does end up driving some of her choices. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. And it's funny, it's not necessary. This isn't a gendered thing. People don't always know what they want. People are focused on their careers or on whatever, or fighting a rebellion. And yeah, it looks different and works out differently for women than for men sometimes. But yeah, she isn't pressured by Han to do something she doesn't want to do. She's nudged by Han into seeing actually she does want to commit to him in a deeper way, and that she does fairly not too late into the film with enough substance, like when they're already on Bespin. I think that's the time they spend the night. It's clearly they're far more touchy and kissy when they're just before the dinner scene, that they set that up before. So yeah, just to see her up close, to see, I mean, the contrast with in the reaction to is it Riken, whoever the general is, who Han first says, "I gotta go," and he's like, "Yeah, a bounty on your head's a hard thing to deal with. Go ahead." But she storms at him and says, "No, wait a minute. Where are you going?" And tries to make an excuse. So, I mean, thinking about the character in that, yeah, that was my main thing. Just seeing up close again, seeing it on the big screen. I saw that on the big screen maybe a few years ago. In another, well, this was another Full House, which was great.
Nice.
Yeah, it was but it was different with the angle. It's funny how that affects things.
All right, Dominic, did you have any takeaways with Empire this time around, or opinion change? Same.
So
You think?
when Empire's a movie that whenever I sit down to watch it, I always have the same reaction, and the reaction is it's wrong in the sense that it's not actually how I feel. But I always come away from it going, God, I forgot how good that movie is. Yeah. And I don't mean that in the sense that I literally forgot that Empire Strikes Back is like a near perfect movie. It's just like when you sit down to watch a near perfect movie, you get blown away by it. And it really, Empire, Star Wars and Empire, like those two movies, like they are near perfect movies. Like there's nothing to nitpick at. I think all the other movies we can nitpick things here and there, but those two, they just fly along at near perfect clips and just make everything just happens the way that feels right, and it hits what hits right for the audience. And yeah, it's amazing to see it. It's great to see it with an audience. We went to like an afternoon screening. There were two screenings at this theater. One was Saturday night, that was like in the evening, and then there was the one Sunday afternoon. We went to the Sunday afternoon one, so I feel like we were more at the kid audience one. So you were seeing it with little kids, and like the little kids were right there with it. They were right into it. Nice. We always argue about what's the right movie to start kids on with Star Wars. I'm of the opinion you start them with any of them. You start them with any of them, they'll get right into it. Whether the old ones, new ones, somewhere in between. And so yeah, it's just great fun. And when Luke walks into the carbon freezing chamber, and again we were at this angle where we're kind of looking up at the screen. And you hear Vader say, "The Force is with you, young Skywalker," and it cuts to him, and he's at the top of the stairs, and it's just the silhouette, and it's all in black with the smoke and the blue background. But you are not a Jedi yet. Like, I got chills. It was so cool because, like, again, we're like looking up at him. Vader's just looming over you, and we see Vader so much in so many ways, and often in comedic ways these days. And like sometimes you can forget just how intimidating he is. So yeah, love seeing Empire. And anytime you get to see these movies with an audience, I think it's true.
That's excellent. Very, very excellent. Well, here's something that we all saw. Hopefully, if you all stayed after the movie, although I think I've heard some people say they got before the movie. The Acolyte preview. So Omar, I'm going to toss it to you. What was your big takeaway from the Acolyte preview?
Well, my initial takeaway was, wow, I can barely see it with the theater lights turned on.
Oh no!
Yeah.
What
the hell was up with that? Why was it after the movie? It should have been before the movie. You should dim the theater lights, play the Acolyte thing, and then dun 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 dun. That's how it should have gone.
Weirdly, I didn't have that problem, but I don't know why. Maybe I.
It's just something that happened. They realized halfway through, but by the time that happened, it was already ending and getting ready for the trailer. So, and funny enough, I used to work at that theater, so I was half thinking just to get up and flip the switch myself.
Nice.
But no, the clip itself I thought was great. It got me super interested, invested in the action. What is her name? Carrie Ann
Moss.
Does an excellent job in the scene. I love the aliens. I love the sets. It's just I don't know. There is something just within that scene, even comparative to like maybe some of the current, Mando shows, that I think this has something a little bit more. And I'm really curious about what the other fight scenes in particular are going to look like, particularly like a lightsaber fight. I really want to see what a lightsaber fight's going to look like in the Acolyte. Now, obviously, we've seen like snippets of something in the trailers, but I'm really looking forward to that aspect of it. But yeah, no, it did exactly what it needed to do for me. So it was really it was a good scene to choose to show people. I think.
Matthew, what about you? What was your takeaway from this scene?
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't know if Indara and May would actually interact. I don't know if the trailer. I for some reason my mind just doesn't recall them ever interacting, have anything to do with each other. And so here they are fighting and dueling in this really incredibly intricate, very a lot of footwork heavy fighting that it was more of an Eastern style than we're used to. I think, even though lightsaber fights are always more Eastern, it was very technical, very smooth, and very much of an earlier time. This is still, it's 100 years after the books, 100 years before the movies, and so that was different. I was hoping a little bit for a bit more of a story. I mean, we got that the next day, but because we saw it on Friday, so we got that on Saturday, which we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, it was a great to set people up for the feel, which is why you're Dom, you're right. It should have been before. It should be like, boom, here's this really, really cool action story coming to you on Disney Plus in exactly a month. If you've never heard of this thing called The Acolyte, I mean, chances are people had, but not necessarily, right? And because our theater just cleared out after the movie.
Exactly.
Same.
Okay, that's not true. That's not true.
Almost.
That's not true. No. There
Mine
were
did.
way more people that stayed. It was
Really?
the people that they were the
Yeah.
sort of couple rows in front of us. Definitely cleared out much more. I looked to the back. It was still. It was still
I didn't look
2/3
back,
full.
so.
It was still 2/3 full. And then
There
it
were
Right.
it took forever to get out of there too.
Yeah,
So many
okay.
people were.
There were more people who cleared out than I was expecting, and I was hoping. I'll put it that way.
Mine
save
did.
it.
My dad and I were like, "You're gonna miss the preview." We were saying that to each other, like we weren't saying it to them. Like, "You're gonna miss the preview." I'm like, all right, more preview for us.
Yeah. pretty
Matthew
much.
was saying it to the people who were leaving.
Yeah,
He's like, "Where are you going?"
Where are you going? That's like, yeah, it was exciting, and and anytime we get to see more of the show, I'm always stoked. Again, we'll get to that in the trailer in a minute, but yeah, it's looking beautiful. It's looking so well made already. Even I don't know what it's going to look like with the full series, with what budget it has necessarily, but come on, let's get this already.
That's where the money shot for sure.
Yeah.
Dominic, what about you? What about your takeaway from the scene in question?
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like not who the good guys, who the bad guys are, but like who's the protagonist, like who's the character that we're following, because from everything that's been said about the show, I mean, they were the first cast member announced, but all through the promotion from the first set pictures to celebration and everything since then. But Amandla Stenberg seems to be the lead of the show. But the character May seems from our sort of typical understanding to be the antagonist. May's going up against the Jedi. She's fighting the Jedi.
Yeah.
But if we're to believe that this is the main character of the show, so then who are we meant to root for? Are we meant to root for May? Are we meant to root for the Jedi? Bit of both. Is it supposed to be sort of one of those shows where you kind of, is it like when the Hound fought Brienne of Tarth on Game of Thrones? Like you love both of those characters. You don't want one of them to lose. And I have a feeling this show's gonna feel like that, where there's probably a pretty clear ultimate sort of bad guy, the red lightsaber wielding guy with the mask with the teeth. That I'm pretty sure that's a Kylo Ren concept that's been reutilized. I know I've seen that design. I've seen that design somewhere before. I'm pretty sure it was in a Force Awakens art of
Omar,
book
you're the
somewhere.
sequel trilogy research guy. You should know this.
I actually don't know the answer to that. I'll have to
I'm gonna
look back into the art of books. To see,
Yeah, we'll
but
get the books out afterwards.
I'm
Yeah,
sure it isn't
yeah.
Vellum or something. I don't know. The zipper.
So like that character seems like, okay, that's probably somebody who we're not gonna like, that or like that we're gonna like, but as sort of as a villain. Whereas you know, the rest of the time, you know, the Jedi Order, this is post High Republic, pre Order 66. So they're in that sort of phase where their star is starting to fade, their shine is starting to wane. Like things aren't going to look so great, and we may begin to be looking at the Jedi as this series goes on, going, man, I don't know. May's making some good points here. May's making some good points, and even though we don't agree with her master, we kind of like her. We kind of like what she's all about. So I'm really intrigued by that and really enjoying that. So I think that this scene kind of set that up really nicely, and like it has been said, the fighting style, the way Carrie-Anne Moss goes up the stairs, like feels like sort of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon-esque. Like it's really cool.
Also, the
Yes.
Matrix. Like I immediately thought of her
Yeah.
in the Matrix, walking along the wall.
Well, about the show, to quote a friendly senator from Naboo, good is a point of view, etiquette. So yeah, I love the scene. Very action-packed, very, very well choreographed. But let's move on to the trailer itself, and I'll start off with my big takeaway, which will kind of set the tone. The first few lines about the Republic's peace. That is a lie. Peace is a lie.
Where have you heard that?
There's only passion.
right.
Yes, the Sith
Some
code.
Sith code stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this trailer was really cool. A bit more story driven. Very much. I feel like we finally are understanding a little bit of, okay, someone's trying to kill Jedi. Who's killing Jedi? Well, what's going on? Everyone's a suspect. You're all suspects, as far as I'm concerned. That's all good mystery should work. I don't trust anybody. I don't even trust the heroes or the villains. But very good, very beautiful, and of course, we got a really good look at. I'm just gonna say it's a Sith Lord. I know some people said it might be a Knight of Ren. Nah, I just think it's just the helmet. It's the Sith Lord. Whether he's the master or the apprentice, I don't know. But we got our first Sith Lord, so it's awesome. But Dominic, I'm gonna toss it to you again. What was your takeaway from the trailer?
It's that this show feels like a true ensemble piece. Like I know we were just talking about Amanda Sandberg as the lead, and I think probably ultimately that's true. But like you look through this trailer, there's so many characters, and there's so much that seems to be going on, and so many sort of takes on everything. You know, whether it's kind of that cult that we've seen a fair bit of. There's Manny Jacinto, or like you're saying, peace. He's the one who's saying peace is a lie. There's a lot of shots of Daphne Keane and Charlie Bennett in there alongside Lee Jung Jae, and just sort of seeing the Jedi in that way. Like we feel like we're stepping into a really sort of rich and expansive galaxy. It feels really really raw and really big. And for as much as I love the Mandoverse, it at times can feel a bit small, because it's only showing us little pieces of things. It's like Din Djarin and Grogu go to a planet and something happens. And that's it. That's the whole episode. I saw a thing that was sort of making fun of it. And there was like, Din Djarin and Grogu need milk. They go to a planet. They're like, you can only get milk if you kill this creature. And then they kill the creature and they get the milk. And like, that's every episode of The Mandalorian.
Yeah. And Jawa's cheer. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is funny but reductive. Anyways, like this just, I don't know, it just feels bigger. It feels more raw. It feels like, you keep using the Game of Thrones comparison, but like it feels like that. It feels like there's many factions, and I don't know, it feels like those factions will be around for more than just like one episode, 1 week. Because again, that's a very Mandoverse thing, where it's like you get a faction, they're there, and they're kind of interesting, and then they're gone. Like we haven't seen those like shrimp farmers since season 1. I don't think we'll see Jack Black and Lizzo again. Like, like a lot of these characters, they sort of like drop in for one episode, and then they're gone, or they'll come back in sort of like a comedic-ish way. But it feels like it's sort of kept to one character, whereas this feels really big and really expansive, and like that cast is amazing.
So we all know now that Jon Favreau, if you want to be bold, You need an episode where the Mando needs to save Jack Black and Lizzo from Thrawn, and have Jack Black, Lizzo, and Thrawn in the same room together.
It's all
Yes,
connected.
yes.
Please.
Absolutely.
And,
Imagine just Pelimoto just showing up on Thrawn's bridge and just Thrawn just playing it straight while Pelimoto's like, "Oh my god, what's this blue guy doing here?" What
She is
the
the
heck?
key to all of
Christopher
this.
Lloyd
Yes.
admiring Dooku again, please.
Right.
Exactly. But Omar, I'll toss it to you. What was your takeaway from the trailer?
Excellent trailer. I really enjoyed it much more than the first one. Not to say that the first one was bad in any regard, but I have, outside of the trailers, or at least these two trailers, I've been really kind of limiting myself on reading too much about the Acolyte. Like, I didn't even know the characters' names, but now I do. I've kind of broken that since this trailer to delve more into it. And yeah, no, it's awesome. I think the choice to focus on a murder mystery, I haven't stopped thinking about it since I saw the trailer. 'Cause
Lightsabers out.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
The last Death Star.
Yeah. And I think it's so smart because that's going to be a type of story where it's going to be elevated by, or it's going to be pushed by like the twists and turns and keeping the audience invested into where we think it's going to go next. It's going to do so well with the week to week format. I think it's going to appeal to that water cooler kind of talk. I think it's such a good move for a Star Wars show like this. And yeah, I'm super curious about what is going on. Seeing Jedi get attacked in the trailer, seeing fallen lightsabers on the ground, really powerful imagery. Yeah, all of it just kind of compiles together to say like it has always been like one of my most anticipated shows since I first heard of it, and it's proving to be that and much more. I'm super excited to see exactly what goes on. And if I have to talk about like kind of what I really want, if I'm speaking like selfishly a little bit, I really do want, and I think I actually heard, just from our work, Joel, of working on videos that kind of report news. I remember a quote. I don't know if it was from Headland regarding that it was going to be like the prequels to the prequels, which of course it is that because it is set before the prequels. But I would love it for it thematically to be that as well, and for it to, by the end of the series, I would love it for the audiences to say, "Man, I really want to know more about this mystery," and then they can just continue on with it in the prequels. They could literally just boot up Disney Plus, continue it, and check out the prequels to kind of get like that's how much involved I want this Sith mystery to be connected to like the ongoing mystery that is, of course, the Sith that are behind the scenes. That's what I want ultimately out of the Acolyte. Of course, if the Acolyte ends up being more standalone, that's okay too. But that's just kind of that's the vibe I have kind of been existing under after watching that trailer. So yeah.
Well, as I always say, I am looking forward to Amanda Stenberg doing essentially the Darth Plagueis origin story. She will make a great Darth Plagueis, and we will all cheer.
Make her make May Darth Plagueis' master. I know there's Tenebrous. Don't even make her Tenebrous. Just make her like let's just
sure
eat Tenebrous out of the canon and come up with a new.
Well, the elderly male Biff out of the canon and make it.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. Sure. The Darth Tenebrous origin story. Let's go. The Tenebrous way. I'll just say before I pass it on to you, Matthew, is Matthew, we've talked about this a lot. It's funny, we always talk about like how this is the Space Wizard show, Yeah, we have 3 Space Wizard shows, and they're also very different. Like, it's almost unfair to say this is a Space Wizard show. I mean, it is, but it's not at the same time. And it's just interesting. But I'll talk to you, of course. What was your takeaway from the trailer?
So, I mean, it is a different kind of looking at the Force and delving with Force sensitive, Jedi and others. I'm doing the hopefully healthy psychological thing of feeling the feels while also keeping an open mind. The feels, just the raw feels, is that I'm actually nervous. I'm nervous. I know, again, the open mind is saying this is mainly just as a tease. Her Headland's comments about going kind of against kind of what George had set up about light and dark and all that I cling too closely, too tightly to it, potentially. or who knows what. But I am nervous. There is a real danger of painting the light side as actually dark and as actually, um, the Jedi are just untrustworthy and corrupt even at this time. And again, going with the Palpatine route of, the Jedi and the Sith, they're the same. They claim power, the two-side thing. I'm nervous because it maybe means I'm going with what's being teased, what's being tugged at, and then open mind of, okay, is she doing that, and are all these materials doing that in order to tell us an even more complex story, right? Don, what you're referring to of how at this time the Jedi themselves are not fully at the service of the light, right? We don't have the Lena So's great works. We don't have the hero of Hetzel almost sacrificing herself for the sake of entire star system. Of course, Avar herself questions that whole title, but yeah, what is the even more complex, even more nuanced perspective that this show is going to bring? And why am I being taken for a ride here about it? Yeah, so both of those at once, because it definitely is playing up these quotes, at least, and the way those lines are delivered about the Jedi being untrustworthy. The way those lines are delivered in a way of trustworthy characters, in kind of the tone and the
I don't know. Maybe it's just having watched all of The Good Place. I don't trust a word that comes out of Manny Jacinto's mouth.
Well, yeah,
that dude did so much you know what down in Jacksonville, Florida. I just expect him to get a thermal detonator, throw it in, and go.
Oh God!
Jaguars rule! And throw it in there.
And hopefully he's not as hopefully his character in this is smarter.
Is he the one who says "piece of the lie"?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't trust anybody who says "piece of the lie." That's Palpatine levels of let's paint the office red.
But again, the performance it's really effective.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just the visceral reaction before thinking about it more deeply of twisting me around and saying, "Oh yeah, those who claim peace are lying to you, just like Palpatine lies, right? You know what I mean?"
And that's just it. I mean, I don't think that what this show is going to say is that the light is somehow corrupt. It's just the people who claim to fight for the light or claim to be the representatives of it may be corrupt. And I think we see this all the time in our own world, in our own lives, that people who say, I'm out there to do good, really they're out for number one. They're out for themselves. And nobody can be a true embodiment of the light side. You bring up the hero of Hetzel, you bring up, can we say a few High Republic spoilers on here, like from phase 1, like the ending of phase 1? Like,
Omar, do you mind?
I don't mind. Go.
So,
yeah.
You're looking at phase 3 and looking at how they talk about Stellan Gios, who is dead. He has become a legend. Versus the way Stellan appeared in the story. Mm-hmm. He was flawed, he was real, he was human, just like everybody else. He wasn't this giant that even his friends are building him up to be. Even Elzar and Avar are building him up to be. And Avar is, we're getting to see that with a character who is alive and well. This is, like you said, the hero of Hetzel. This is the character who is supposed to be the embodiment of everything that the Jedi are supposed to represent. And over the course of phase 1 and now into phase 3, we're seeing her grapple with, what does it mean to have that title? And nobody can live up to that. Nobody can live up to it. And again, that goes into the Last Jedi territory with Luke, as Luke Skywalker, a legend. Sometimes the galaxy needs a legend, but then when you meet the actual human, they're just human, like the rest of us. They are flawed. And so, the challenge of those on the light is to, understand that they are incapable of actually being that legend.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to let people believe in them the way Luke does in Crate, but they cannot actually be that. So they have to continuously work towards that. And so, the Jedi in this show may well look at themselves and go, yeah, we're the best. We're awesome. We're here to do great things. We're here, like, here we are to save the day, like awesome heroes. Isn't that what Missy says at some point in Doctor Who, Joel? Like, I'm pretty sure, like, it has that line. Like, that's what they think. They may think that, but what they're going to grapple with is that they aren't actually. They aren't. They can't be. Nobody can be that all the time. So how do they? How do they? How do you go forward?
Right.
How do you inspire people at a time when people are losing?
Yeah. I'll
Omar,
try to respond to that. I hope that's where she goes. I hope that's where she goes, is these Jedi characters finding more honesty in themselves with, with their limits and their limit capacity to even do good, and to not just look out for number one, and to actually then say, okay, we're doing the best we can.
But I think we should also see some Jedi characters who are flawed, who just say, we are awesome, we're the best, and then fail because of it.
I just wonder, will I find that story interesting enough? And that's subjective. But one thing I'll say, though, is we do get a line from Vern. And Vern is that character who thought she was all that when she was a lot younger. And then Starlight Beacon literally crashes and burns. She's going on this journey already a lot younger, to have a lot more honesty, and hopefully can be that wiser voice 100 years later. I don't know.
Omar, would you like to respond to any of this?
Just for the fact that I completely understand where you're coming from, Matthew. I don't know. I still have faith that it's going to portray the Jedi in a fair and like a good way as well. And I think I already kind of talked about what I want out of the series to be. I also want it to be a good entry point, just like we kind of talked earlier about how all Star Wars could be a really good entry point. I want it to be a good entry point for individuals who maybe want to know more about the Jedi and what they're all about. And that would include, of course, showcasing the flaws of the system, but also showing a story that encompasses why the Jedi are needed, why the Jedi are important, and why ultimately the Jedi are the good guys that save the day at the end of the day. And I want that to be front and center in this show as well. Where even by the end of it, we still come out saying like, yes, there are these hurdles that need to be overcome, but it is the Jedi that are going to balance the Force in the galaxy. So,
well, and I think this show ultimately will go that way, because the Jedi don't fall. We know the Jedi don't fall at the end of this. They fall later. So, we'll likely get something that sort of shows, Jedi were a force for good in the galaxy. But like, there's this stuff that's lingering under the surface. There's a growing sentiment within the Order.
And it comes into fruition later.
Will come into will come into full place. And ultimately, the Jedi aren't always going to be the ones to bring things into balance. Again, that's a Luke sort of thing from Last Jedi. To say that with the Jedi die, the light dies is I can't remember what the word is.
Vanity.
Vanity. There it is.
Vanity.
Yeah. And so I think perhaps we'll see some of that vanity in this show. Yeah. I think we see some of that vanity in the prequels and in the Clone Wars. But it would be nice to see an earlier iteration of that in this show. Yeah. Because even that vanity exists even if you go back pre-High Republic, like at the beginning of Phase 1. There's definitely all that stuff with Lena So and the Jedi and everything. There's a real vanity going on there, real sense of vanity going on there.
And all that my stuff being said, I adore The Last Jedi, and it preaches at all of us. So I'm probably going to be wrong and get over it, get over myself. But also Qui-Gon, he wasn't there to free slaves. What's with that? Come on.
Yeah.
So
but like this is the thing about the Jedi is they can't be everywhere all the time, and part of the reason that people lose, it's interesting. Last Jedi shows us why the legend of Luke Skywalker is important. How he inspires everybody at the end. He inspires Rey and Finn and Poe and all the surviving members of the Resistance. It for as much time as that movie spent saying the legend isn't the be all end all, it ultimately ends with why that's important. And then we see Broom Boy and his friends thinking about that. So the legend is important, but then ultimately the Jedi can never truly live up to that. and if you look in Clone Wars in the Trace and Rafa arc, you know, the Jedi they're trying to capture Zero the Hutt. Trace and Rafa are relaying the story, and they come in like awesome heroes, and they just mess everything up. They succeed in their mission, but they mess everything else up. And then they're just like, sorry, not sorry. Don't lose your head. Like, you know, like that's kind of what they do is they leave them high and dry. And that causes Trace and Rafa to lose faith in the institution of the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
And so that's the line that the Jedi have to walk of, you know, in being an inspiration, being something that inspires people to go out and improve their own circumstances, rather than being the ones that save the day. But with those stories, sometimes instead of inspirations, you get complacency. Instead of people thinking, I can go out there and save the day and you know, improve my own station, you're sitting on your butt waiting for somebody to come and do it for you. You're waiting for a superhero. You're waiting for Superman, for Captain America, for Obi-Wan Kenobi to come and do it for you. When ultimately those characters, when they're at their best, are inspiring those around them to do great things. And yeah, so I mean that's another place that this story could go, of, you know, showing us like, yeah, okay, the Jedi are doing good things, but people are now just sitting on their hands going, oh yeah, Jedi will take care of this. Jedi will take care of this. And, you know, Qui-Gon, he sits down, he's not there to free slaves. He can't be. He can't fight that battle for himself. But he encourages Anakin, and he encourages Anakin's instincts to, you know, get in the pod race and go out there and you know, be the best version of himself, which in turn ultimately leads to Anakin's freedom, which with, you know, Qui-Gon intervenes a little bit there. But there's, you know, Shmi says that line, you know, you've brought hope to people who had nothing. Because there are a lot of people who just sort of look at it, who because Anakin won that race, their own stations are improved. And now because they saw, hey, yo, look at this little slave kid, look what he just did. He just won the race, and I completed my bets. You know, if he can do it, I can do it. Like, let's get out there, because that's what the Jedi are supposed to be. That's what the inspirational heroes are supposed to be. So if he can do it, I can do it. Let's get out there. And so like that actually is, you know, Qui-Gon through Anakin, and so the two of them, you know, being what Jedi should be. Qui-Gon encourages the best in Anakin, which hopefully then in turn brings out the best in many other people at Tatooine. To,
well,
you know, make things better for everybody.
Well, I know for one thing I want is for that Sith Lord to take off his mask and reveal himself to be Darth Nubs.
There you go. Oh my god, I would love that.
It must happen. It must happen.
Could I just want to finish off saying, like, I love conversations regarding the Jedi and morality, and I am looking forward to having the same conversation every single week when the Acolyte drops. And so y'all better invite me back.
We will. I have probably more things I could say just about the Sith, because that's where my interests are. But instead of the Sith, we could talk about the Sith and where they succeeded in the Empire. Tales of the Empire, for short. So, Omar, I'm going to throw it to you. What was the one thing that stood about Morgan's story, and then the one thing that stood out about Barriss's story? Feel free to give one thing each.
Okay.
Make them both fair.
Let's see here. So, first of all, I just want to say, like, as in the entirety of Tales of the Empire, as well as Tales of the Jedi, I always have looked at them as kind of how Dave Filoni explained about them in the panel at Celebration Anaheim. I think it was Anaheim. Where he basically called them like tone poems. Like, you know, these are short poems that are meant to evoke, you know, just more feelings than anything, and paint a picture of just these individual moments in these characters' lives that you've already seen before in other media. And I think in that regards, like Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi are a big success, at least for me. You know, I really enjoy them for what they are, which are these like bite-sized tales of these individuals' lives. Now that said, just like if I was to like go deeper into it and really start analyzing, there are definitely things that could be like, you know. I think the Morgan story was probably like my least kind of favorite out of not just here but also Tales of the Jedi. I thought the first episode was the best, but I think my favorite aspect of both of them and is how much thematically, like, you could have these ties between just how an individual deals with trauma.
Mm.
And I think for Morgan, is an individual who deals with trauma in a very destructive way. She really makes it everybody's problem, you know? And she's very much in a situation where kind of the galaxy, like, has put her in a place where she could do good. Like, there are those witches that help her out. Um, she's in charge of, like, a town. Like, she has the capacity to do good, but she constantly rejects that for the destructive. And now the opposite of that is with Barriss,
Mm.
who, is complete opposite. The galaxy puts her in the worst situation where she has to be an inquisitor and kind of goes against, like, these morals that she has strong morals, but she's just always been kind of led astray with how she feels, in regards to the Jedi. So she was in this terrible, like, mindscape,
Mhm.
and then she breaks that kind of toxic cycle, and ends up dealing with her trauma in a healthy way, literally healing others.
Mm.
And I think that's really beautiful. So that's kind of like my general takeaway of the two, and how, like, I think some of my favorite parts about these kinds of stories is just the parallels, how they're all tied together by the main central theme. I think Tales of the Jedi did the exact same thing in a very beautiful way. Um, and yeah, I really really enjoyed these two tales, even if, again, I wasn't as invested in terms of, like, what the Morgan Elsbeth story really was. And the Barriss story is a good, like, completed story. I don't know what they're gonna do with Barriss. Like, they really could just have her, dead at this moment in time and, like, not continue her story. I kind of doubt that, but but yeah, that's pretty much my entire thoughts in terms of these Tales of stories. So
Dominic, what about you? One thought for Barriss, one thought for Morgan.
Um, with Barriss, we were just talking about the Acolyte and, like, who's the protagonist, who's the antagonist, hero, villain. What does all that mean? And I think Barriss is an interesting case study in that, where she's definitely the bad guy in the Ahsoka arc, but she's not an evil character per se. She does evil things, and the consequences of her actions result in pain and suffering for a lot of people. But ultimately, she's motivated by something more. She's motivated by this feeling, this sense that she's gotten of the Jedi and the Republic not being what they should be, not standing for what they should. And so she acts out in a way that is counterproductive to her ultimate goals, but does succeed in making a point. And so Barriss was never going to be an inquisitor.
Hmm.
Whenever an inquisitor showed up in the last 10 years, there was especially a female inquisitor, people always be like, oh, it's Barriss. I remember Ben Hart was absolutely convinced that the seventh sister was Barriss Offee. I remember we argued about it when we wrote the article for StarWarsUnderworld.com back in the day. Of, like, he was like, yeah, it's Barriss. He was like, he put it in the text. I'm like, that's not Barriss. And I think we landed on could potentially be Barriss. But I'm like, Barriss isn't an inquisitor. That's not where she's at. Her values do not align with the Empire. She's kind of Saw Gerrera in that way, where she's her values don't align with the Empire. She believes in something bigger. She just goes about it in a very extreme way. So I like that, she tried out the Inquisitor thing, but just wasn't cut out for it, because that's not who she is. That's not who she
Right.
is. So I really liked that aspect of it. The Morgan storyline was fun. It was good, like, backstory, fill the gaps kind of thing. That third episode, I don't know.
yeah,
There's always one episode of Tales of the something that where you're like, did we need that? And that was this one. I feel like there's a more interesting Morgan Elsbeth story to be told than that one. Although I did like, I will say, despite that kind of being the episode that I'm the most on, I did kind of like, it's Tales of the Empire. So let's see what these Imperial colonies look like in the first days of the New Republic, when the Empire is, there are people who were within the Empire who are still trying to hold on, these warlords like Morgan Elsbeth. So I thought that was pretty neat. So I enjoyed the Morgan stuff, especially the Dathomir episode, and the Thrawn stuff was pretty fun. But it was good. But the Barriss one, that was where I think the heart of the show lied.
I think I like the Morgan one more because I don't care about Barriss as a character, really. I never have. But I mean, could finally see what happened there. I especially like the second episode. So that's my big takeaway is I got to see Pelion finally and Thrawn do stuff together. The dynamic duo's back and got Rook there, got Thrawn and his clique recruiting Morgan into the fold. That was cool. That was my favorite episode. I don't know. I really like the Barriss episodes too. I'm glad they didn't make her an Inquisitor. I actually thought she would join. We saw. Funny enough, she became a healer, which is kind of what her whole EU character was. That she was a healer Jedi. She kind of rather been a nurse Jedi. So I'm glad they did that. Probably reconcile with Ahsoka somewhere in between episodes 2 and 3 and. Probably with the past of not the post. Oh, the open. God darn it!
Just the
too many paths. The past. I said past of the open hand. Nope, different organization. Yeah, the path of the open hand, crazy people. But yeah. I mean, no, I love these Tales things. I hope to the good force they make more Tales of Bounty Hunter, Tales of the Mandalorian, Tales of the Republic, the Rebellion, whatever. Keep doing it. It's great. Matthew, what about you? Barriss, Morgan, overall.
I'm going to say two contradictory things about the Morgan story. I like that they focused on Morgan, that even though Thrawn is in it, they kept the focus on her and on her journey. Yeah, especially that first episode, the Battle of Dathomir, Grievous coming there, wrecking it, and yeah, just her origins as someone who goes out and takes action without regard, like Omar, you were saying, without regard for the consequences, for who gets hurt and who gets in the way and whatnot. So that being said, yeah, the seeing Thrawn in that was in that second episode, right? Was pretty spectacular. Oh, yeah. Hearing Lars Mikkelsen in that Clone Wars animated style, and this is funny. We keep going back and forth with Thrawn. This was the closest we've seen to the Zahn Thrawn on screen, because compared to the other Imperial admirals and Imperial brass, he actually knows what's what. He actually knows what the Empire really needs, and what the Empire needs is what Morgan really cares about and is really on about. Yes, revenge,
logistics,
okay, but yeah, logistics. Having a mind to invent a TIE fighter with shields. Who knew? And that he ultimately credits her. Obviously, we don't know that in Rebels, but that's fine. That's in real universe reasons. But yeah, so I enjoyed that. I'm with you all. Clearly, I'm with Dom and Omar. The Barriss story is one of the greats. And I'll say, look, a few things. I actually wasn't sure that she wouldn't be an Inquisitor until we saw this, and here's why: is in part because the Tales of the Jedi with Dooku. There's the parallel with Saw Gerrera, definitely the parallel with Dooku in Tales of the Jedi. He has the same qualms, same concerns. With Barriss, it is a far more sympathetic storyline. My first thought after seeing, I think it was the first episode or the second episode, Dom, I turned to you and said, I needed one more scene. I needed one more scene of her, I think the second episode. One more scene.
No, the first episode.
Yeah, it's that I needed one more scene of her going full on into the dark side, because that's what I thought was we were going to be told she's going to full on into the dark side. and then in the second episode where she turns back, and there I finally see, oh, all along her qualms and her concerns, yeah, like Dom, you're saying, she did a really, really bad thing. She did a really terrible thing. But ultimately, it was a misguided, very youthful, immature response to trying to serve the light. Oddly enough, in counterpoint with Ahsoka, who leaves the Order in that arc to better serve the light, Barriss is finding a way to move forward and step forward, and starts with that one Jedi she encounters on the mountain, and then the rest of her life almost atoning. There's that theme of atonement.
Right.
I wonder if part of it, yeah, she has to hide from the Empire, but she needs to go and seclude herself in this incredibly remote, rugged lifestyle in order to atone for the sins of her youth in a way that, yeah, can bring true peace and justice back to the galaxy, healing to the galaxy. And in a way, she's a healer. I think, Omar, you were getting at this. She heals herself in that way as well. I think, given everything what we saw with in Rise of Skywalker with Rey, they can work that.
Force healing is like one of the best powers they've.
And it's what she's doing. Here's the thing about force healing: it isn't simply a superpower. You need to have the intentions of the heart, of connecting, of genuinely wanting the best for that other person. That we see even with her with the kid, and she's willing to sacrifice herself for that kid. And yeah, I mean, how many, again, it's this full circle moment. This beautiful, wise, aged person, elderly person now. I don't know if she's that old, but they definitely draw her face clear with a bit more wrinkles and a bit more stress of working herself back to the light. And it was, yeah, a really compelling, definitely up there with the Dooku and Ahsoka stories for sure.
Yes. See, Darksiders, you don't need all dark science and the necromancy. You can just open up your heart and heal. All right. Speaking of which, this is a good transition moment to the Bad Batch. Yes, the Bad Batch. It's 3 seasons. It's over. It can't be over. Oh man. Yeah, Bad Batch season 3. You know what? I guess to start us off, Dominic, I'm gonna just toss it to you, and I'm just gonna ask this question: when the Bad Batch was first announced, what were your initial thoughts? And now, what are your thoughts of the Bad Batch after the show is over?
My initial thought was, really, them? And my thoughts now the show's over was, yeah, them. It was perfect. They they were like. Yeah, it wasn't perfect week to week, no, but like they were a wonderful vessel to explore this time period with. And I just thought that the finale brought it all to a close in a really beautiful and satisfying way. It focused in on the characters, on the Bad Batch themselves. And I think that was right. And each of the characters got sort of a fitting conclusion to their story. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm sad it's done. I'm sad there's not another season, but I'm looking forward to seeing what Lucasfilm Animation does next. And I feel like, there's plenty of room for more stories with all of these characters. And I feel like there's a few loose threads from this show that very much set the stage for another show. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. But I just want to say I'm gonna probably have to make a move here.
Ooh, but before you go, do you have any cold takes for us before you leave?
Yes, I do, and I will cop to being one of the perpetrators of this most frigid take.
Oh wow.
And that is, I was convinced that one of the CX clones was going to be revealed to be a zombie reanimated survived tech.
Yeah.
There was enough evidence in the first couple of episodes, or enough circumstantial evidence that made me think that it might be going that direction. It felt very on brand for type of story that the Bad Batch was telling. And, I was able to sort of convince myself of a version of the story that doesn't that is separated from the rest of everything that goes on with Star Wars. That is just this story where it makes sense that Tech comes back and there's, sort of, they got things wrong with Crosshair, but there's a chance to get things right with Tech. Like I still sort of stand by that sort of analysis that could have been interesting, even though ultimately they didn't go that way. And ultimately, when you sort of take that macro perspective on Star Wars as a whole, and just the fact that they can't keep characters dead lately, it's better and it's better than Tech stayed dead, because that death was so impactful and so devastating. And I do believe that when you kill off a character, it should mean something.
Yeah.
It should be impactful. It should and it should impact the characters. And I think Teth's death, or Tech's death, did just that. So I really I'm both glad and sad that didn't happen, because I talked myself into it being like a good idea and potentially being like a really good story. But in the grand scheme of Star Wars, it's better that when a character dies, they stay dead. So yeah, and
Stay dead,
just
Tech.
And just in the spirit of potentially setting up a future cold take, I'll give you a prediction for the Acolyte.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that the character Jecki Lon, which is the Jedi Padawan played by Daphne Keane, is not long for this galaxy.
Oh no, I really like her already.
I think she's going to be one of our big deaths in season 1.
Is she the alien?
The alien,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Great design.
It's a great design. They've done a lot to put this character sort of front and center. Daphne Keane is an actor that a lot of people like because of her role in Logan and his Dark Materials. So like, this is a kind of like a character an actor people like. Yeah, she'd be fun to have around for a long time. Cool character, cool design, front and center. But to show just how dark this show could be, kill off one of the kids. Now, it's not as traumatic as killing off a character played by a literal child actor. Daphne Keane is, playing younger, but I think I think Jecki's going to be one to catch a red lightsaber somewhere along the line. So I look forward to us playing this clip back in about 4 months' time when we do cold takes about the Acolyte.
There we go.
I'll just add her Vernestra, man. It's gonna hurt if she hears Vernestra. One of us is gonna be really sad. But yes, thank you, Dominic, for joining us. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you guys. It was lots and lots of fun. Always a pleasure to be on with you guys, Matt and Joel, and Omar. Is always a treat to chat with you.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then
bye.
Let's see. I guess I'll remove you.
No.
Okay. Well, I removed him for now. Oh, he's still in there. But now then there were 3. All right. So Omar, I'm gonna toss you the same question. What were your initial thoughts of the Bad Batch when they were first announced back in? Oh my gosh, 2020? 2021?
2020. It was 2020.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And what were your initial thoughts of them now after the series is over?
Well, I actually tried to see what my thoughts were back in the day by looking at some old tweets. And I just remember being excited for the fact that it was confirmed that the Bad Batch was the next series. Because in the rumor mill, the Bad Batch was alongside a Rebels sequel series. And so I was like, oh my goodness, if this is confirmed, then we're definitely going to get that Rebels sequel series, which I assumed at the time was animated, but of course it ended up being live action. So it's very ironic that now, after seeing both shows, I ended up liking the Bad Batch a little more than the Rebels sequel series that I was super anticipating for. Not that I disliked Ahsoka, of course, but I think Bad Batch did something really special, and it's really heightened here in this 3rd season that kind of brought everything together and wrapped things up in a super satisfying way, and is thematically coherent, which is something that I love when Star Wars really gets right. Like really brings the theme of the entire show to the forefront,
Mhm.
and it bookends the entire series with what it's saying, and it's highlighted by that very last scene in this last season of the Bad Batch. Yeah, just overall great series. It's either my favorite or second favorite
Mhm.
animated Star Wars project, which it's between this and the Clone Wars. Um, in terms of canon, like I'm a sucker for the micro series. It's my
Nice.
all-time favorite animated anything.
Hmm.
But yes, in terms of like the canon projects, the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch, I haven't made up which one I like more. I think my favorite thing about the Bad Batch and season 3 in particular is I really want to see how it plays on rewatch, because
Oh.
it was a season that I think the week to week format, not that it did it a disservice in any way, but I think it really felt like one continuous narrative from beginning to end. And so it became a little awkward in how they chose to end some of their episodes, where it's like,
Hmm.
the needle wasn't moved too much, but at the same time, I'm invested in all of the things that are happening still. So I feel like it's a season that probably could benefit from just a binge rewatch,
Yeah.
just all straight through season 3. That's something I really wanted to fit before this podcast, but I didn't have the time. It was a pretty busy week. But yeah, that's something I'll have to see if that point stands true. But yeah, no, Bad Batch season 3, really amazing season. Probably one of my favorite seasons of an animated
Mhm.
Star Wars project overall. So yeah.
Okay. Matthew, you and I weren't even podcasting when Bad Batch was announced. It
True.
feels like a different age almost. So I'm going to ask you this question. What were your initial thoughts when Bad Batch was first announced all the way in 2020 before we even started podcasting? And what are your thoughts about it now? If you can remember, of course.
Yeah, similar to Dom's. Just okay. Why are we getting this random corner from this one arc in season 7 of Clone Wars, where so much other things happened, so many other things happened? Again, these aren't space wizards. I want more space wizards. Give me more space wizards instead, please. Turns out they set up very quickly. She could be open to space wizardry. She could be capable of space wizardry. But also there are more important things, more important stories to tell. It isn't just about Jedi and about Sith and about Force users and midi-chlorian counts and all that. It's about family. It's about again coming of age, the classic Star Wars themes that keep coming back, and for good reason. And every show is going to deal with those in different ways. Yeah, it is definitely. I'll say this because it isn't about Jedi or Sith or the Republic politics or anything. It's not gonna. I'm not gonna rank it overall in my grand scheme of whatever. But in terms of an actual series, especially season 3 piece of television, season 3 is the single most coherent, consistent season of Star Wars television. Period, bar none, without exception. More than Endor. More than Endor. I'm going there. And Endor was pretty darn consistent and coherent. This one, season 3, just from start to finish, to your point, Omar, I think it will be an excellent binge watch this season because it's just one really well plotted out story, really well plotted out, well delivered. Some episodes didn't quite finish because it's 2024. That is serial episodic streaming or serial storytelling. It did kind of the best of what Clone Wars with its 4 episode arcs, and Rebels with its kind of season long get to this episode and then get to it a few episodes later, carry that out. It did both of those together and brought it to a really convincing thing. Again, I keep saying this. I say this a lot, and maybe this is when we're going to get to Omega, but just because we can predict some things. So the cold takes, the hot takes, the not the hot takes, the well cooked, the well.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry too. the properly cooked takes. I should say this. That just because we can predict something like Omega, her cloning having something to do with her being force sensitive, that she's able to come of age and become this heroic character in her own right, as a leader, even despite her age or because of her age or whatnot.
Right.
It was still very satisfying, incredibly satisfying, and that's, I mean, Star Wars is doing that. Maybe that's kind of what my things with the Acolyte is. I can't predict it. Can't predict where it's going to go necessarily, whereas this I can, and so maybe I'm just more basic than I thought. I don't know. I hope not. But I don't think I am. But it was, again, story all about setup and payoff, and this one, especially season 3, really earned its place as, again, an angle or perspective on those perennial Star Wars themes of coming of age and family, and coming together for the light, for the good, and committing to that, and as clones, making their own choice, finding their own way. There's a beautiful, and that whole beautiful theme that continues on. I think I may have said this a few weeks ago. Continuing on from, maybe last week, from the Clone Wars, where finally giving clones personality at the end, giving them their full persons. I mean, they always were, but now they really are. I mean, Order 66 doesn't even affect them anymore. They're free to be soldiers or not. And of course, this batch at the very end, that last moment where she goes off, she's free to go and commit to the rebellion as a pilot. So.
I love that moment. Yeah. So I'll just say, I think Bad Batch, just as a show overall, is I think the first animated series that hasn't been kind of affected by really any outside forces. Clone Wars its own beast, so it's almost unfair to talk about that. I guess being canceled. So I mean, that's an outside force.
Yeah.
There's that. Rebels, I had to deal with being a Disney XD cable show and kind of the structure of cable. Resistance found its footing, but then got canceled midway. So,
and it's also a kids show.
I mean, it's a pretty mature kids show, quite frankly. I think it's the most. I think it's more mature than Rebels. It deals with some big themes of fascism.
It has a different angle to it, though.
Yes.
Yeah. But Bad Batch, it was on streaming. It got all 3 seasons. I am 99% sure it was probably always going to be a 3-season show. Nothing really screams undercut, at least to me.
Yeah. That's true.
Per se, it was allowed to do the serialized story, and it's very consistent across the board, quite frankly. But yeah, my initial thoughts were probably the same, although I had a good feeling about it when I heard Jennifer Corbett was going to be the showrunner. She had written some really good episodes of Resistance Season 2, which were some of my favorites. So I had a good feeling about that. And then, after the show, I think one of the great animated shows. I think it's one of the most consistent, one of the best. And I think if I were to watch it from beginning to end in a good rewatch, which I talked about earlier, I very much would I think be one of the tops, one of the tops, A tier all around. So the Bad Batch, but obviously we're gonna get a little deeper into this. I think the one thing that initially we all worried about with the Bad Batch, but by the end, I think for the most part we all really fell in love with characters. I remember a lot of naysayers were like, "Really, this A-Team ripoff? It's just silly. It's like he's the dumb big one. He's the leader. He's the grumpy one. He's the smart one." And then in season 2, it's like, Tech, no! And Crosshair, probably the best redemption story in Star Wars because he got to live and not die. Hooray! That doesn't happen. And of course, I think, I guess we can talk about her because I think she is the main character. She's the heart of the show. She's the reason I think a lot of people perked up when they thought, oh, okay, Omega. She is probably one of the best. Star Wars has this very particular type of like child characters recently, especially when you see in Rebels. And I think she got off to a great start right away, and you really see her grow
Mhm.
quite a lot, and you really see it. Not that I'm saying Ezra didn't grow. I mean, obviously by that final season,
Yeah.
Ezra really did. But you really see it with Omega the most, and by the time she's leading her little mini Bad Batch
True.
juniors,
Mhm.
More
by the
sensitive
end,
Bad Batch. Yeah.
and I love the epilogue of just because she is I call it she is part of what I call the quote unquote the New Hope generation. She's I mean, she's a little older than Luke and Leia, obviously, because she was 13, and obviously by around this time Luke and Leia are just babies. So she's
Mhm.
probably older than them. She's around Hera's age, but she's definitely part of that the next generation. It's like, okay, Hunter's like, we're getting old. We can't really do the fighting as much as we used to. We're not gonna help you. I mean, we are gonna help you, but we can't we can't be on the front line anymore without our hips breaking. Um, but so it's like, it's up to you, Omega. We'll support you, but it's your fight now. It's
Mhm.
up to you to take on the Empire. And that's what I love about it. But Omar, thoughts on you? Thoughts on Omega, and I guess the characters overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say I'm glad we agree that that ending scene is just, chef's kiss, really
Mm-hmm.
really good. Probably now just talking about it and thinking about it, probably one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars animation, because it really does feel like a very good way to pass the baton on to the next generation, and I think
Mhm.
that's really a really
Mhm.
important message. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, no, in regards to the characters, funny enough, we're obviously singing the praises of the Bad Batch. Is such a great show, and I'll always say so. There were some aspects of maybe the character development that I think in hindsight could have gone a little further. But that said, I kind of see what they were going with. Season one, I feel like had a little bit of a focus on Hunter and Wrecker.
Mhm.
They gave singular moments for each of those two characters to really shine and make an impact on the audience, if which it did, obviously. Wrecker with the inhibitor chip acting up, and Hunter being captured and sacrificing himself, in order to for Omega towards the end there. Um, and then season two, I remember it was actually on this podcast when I came here to talk about season two and what I wanted from it. I specifically had said, last season had a focus on Hunter and Wrecker. I would love a focus on Tech and Echo. And sure enough, we did get moments of Tech
Mhm.
and Echo. Um, and yeah, they were really great. Echo leaving the group and Omega having to kind of deal with that, and of course Tech's death, and beforehand though we really got an insight into how Tech processed information, which was very uh, different and something that Omega had to learn too. All of these like character moments have all been through the lens of Omega,
Mhm.
and I think that's really important. So for the third season, of course, the one remaining Bad Batch member that needed to be spotlighted was Crosshair. And to be honest, he's always kind of been in the spotlight since the beginning, having these individual episodes
Mhm.
sprinkled in through season 1 and 2, finally making way and satisfyingly paying off in season 3. Um, yeah, I can gush about Crosshair all day. It really is. Oh yeah, by the way,
Mhm.
I got a friend who drew
That's
this
awesome.
beautiful art piece of Crosshair
Wow.
here.
Nice.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
so shout out to my friend Drew Garces. He's an amazing artist.
Nice.
Have a bit of a glare there, but it's an amazing
Right.
image there that he drew of Crosshair. Crosshair, both Drew and my just favorite addition to canon right now. I think his redemption arc was just absolutely amazing.
Mhm.
Um, and are, are we going to go further into Crosshair, or should I start talking about it now? I just want to.
Go on. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay, perfect. So,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of Crosshair's redemption, I was kind of like really thinking about kind of the previous struggle that the Bad Batch had with what they called the regulars, the
Mhm.
regular clones.
Mhm.
And it's something that kind of was dropped. If you just look at things on the surface, the Bad Batch eventually, paired up with Rex and other regs, and it was totally fine. It's something that kind of more was in the Clone Wars episodes and at the very beginning of the show, back when like petty things like that mattered, but
Right.
once the war ended and everything hit the fan, it was put away to the wayside. But I would actually argue that Crosshair's redemption had a lot to do with kind of how he saw regs and
Mhm.
how he had to kind of put himself into their own shoes to realize that he is just as expendable
Mhm.
as any other soldier. And it started with Cody, or really it started way before that, but Cody was a particular instant there where you know he was able to see someone who finally was able to give him the time of day, a reg that was able to give him the time of day, but ended up leaving and uh, ended up leaving Crosshair and the Empire altogether. And I think it was Rampart who said something along the lines of, "It's something along the lines of how it's interesting that all clones that pair with you end up leaving." You know, what a good moment, what a good line, what a good just moment of realization for Crosshair. And that those feelings carried on to Mayday, another regular clone
Mm.
that you know, once again Crosshair kind of identified with, connected with, and then he saw how the Empire treated, you know, someone like Mayday, and that was the breaking point for him. So yeah, again, I could talk all day about Crosshair, but that's like the redemption aspect that I think Crosshair and Omega are kind of the standout characters,
Oh, definitely.
and I think they're the only two really with the like with an arc. You
Yeah.
know, Omega in terms of like gaining experience, is going from someone who literally hasn't touched grass before to someone who could save a mini Bad Batch group. You know, it's a wonderful arc. It was really great to see that, and then of course Crosshair's redemption. Everyone else, I really kind of focused. I really said the word moments because they really did get really good, powerful moments to each of these characters. But again, they're not. They don't really necessarily have an arc, and
Mhm.
you can make a debate as to like, did they really need one? You know, it's really up to our interpretation. But at the end of the day, I think they did enough with these characters to where I can say, oh yeah, this was definitely uh it worked. It worked what they were able
Mhm.
to accomplish with these characters. I certainly was able to care for each and every one of these characters at least by one point throughout the entire show. So yeah.
Agreed. Matthew, what about you? Your thoughts on the characters, Omega,
Yeah.
Crosshair, the works?
Yeah, and I'll definitely agree. You know, both Omega and Crosshair are the ones who have the fullest arcs. I'll say. I think Tech in season 2 really comes out of his shell. Really, you know, the effect that Omega has on him to actually open up and connect, and of course the effect that Fee then can have on him as well. And so that by the time he dies, and he really dies, we really do feel it. I think if he was just all about numbers and calculation and not able to connect with his own feelings and his own experiences and with those of others, we wouldn't have felt that death as much. But we did because of how far he had come in season 2. It's interesting thinking about Wrecker and Hunter, because I mean the character that has the least growth, oddly enough, is Hunter.
Right.
And that's not to say a bad thing. He's already there. He's the rock. He's just there as the leader. Yeah, I don't think he needs an arc because he's the one who Omega has to react and grow around, and come out of his shadow, which she does at the very end, right? She goes and he stays, right? Whereas before, she was always being protected by him until season 3, of course, when he couldn't be in the end of season 2 and season 3 when which she couldn't be protected because she was captive on Tantus. Crosshair, especially season 3, I love how vulnerable he gets, in the sense of that they push him into this place of vulnerability, of brokenness, because that's where he actually finds his strength as someone who has to actually lean on Omega and rely on her, beginning of the season on that planet, with the card games and all that. Yeah, he's able to somehow help sort things out. He's all, we just got to get back. We got to get back to the gang. And so, no, we got to get Batcher. We got to take care of all these situations. And he has to turn because he can't do this alone. and that's the thing. He thought he could be the good soldier that follows orders oddly enough, in isolation from the rest of the group. Maybe the belonging he seeks in a way, even without him knowing it. Like I was saying, kind of with Leia, like she doesn't know what she wants in some extent. Crosshair doesn't know what he wants when it comes to his brothers in the Bad Batch, until he's forced to, until he gets broken, and like you were saying, he's just expendable. And so that, Omega, of course, over the whole 3 seasons, as I was saying, she is, the Ahsoka, the Ezra, like you're right,
The Luke, even
the Luke, the Rey of this series. Almost as a surprise at first, I think, a little bit, maybe not, maybe from the first moment we could kind of tell that was going to happen. First moment we see her, because that's again a very consistent thing that Star Wars does. It's pick a young character and kick them out into the real world and see what happens. Have them depend on folks who are older than them. But then to learn, at their best, they're going to learn and grow and take on the responsibility of passing on what they've learned. It's a very, Padawan to master kind of pipeline there, oddly enough, in different ways, in different guises. And I mean, by the end, and just the meaning, by the escape from Tantus, she frees herself and those kids, right? And in that moment where I think it's Echo, or is it? Yeah, it's Echo saying, who did that? Well, it was Omega, because that's what I do.
Oh, right.
And she's able to just figure it out herself with the Zillo beast, and just the whole situation of getting out. So again, another character we're already invested in so well, taking charge, and great to see again. She could have gone along with Project Necromancer. She could have gone along with what the Empire was up to. She could have even in this series gone with Ventress, potentially. They could have written that story, but they don't. They say no, she's going to continue to be a clone who fights for the causes that she deems the best, and carries that forward. Again, just continue that theme of she's not a clone, she's a person. She's not a slave, she's a person, and her name is Omega.
I can't do it or New Zealand accent. But yes, I agree. But what are heroes without their villains?
Yeah.
And in this case, it's the Empire. This show, even more so than Rebels, really did a great job just showing the effects the Empire has on everything: the galaxy, the people, the dark science. And just even seeing the internal function of imperial bureaucracy and whatnot, very Rogue One-ish in a lot of ways, quite frankly. Where yes, Rampart and Dr. Hemlock are baddies, and I'll get to them in a second. But I think that why I say the Empire is, well, when you think about it, they're all expendable. They could all be replaced. Really, the only one who isn't is the Emperor. Tarkin is probably the most crafty, because at the end of the day, it's like he just keeps bouncing off his rivals. Like Rampart gone, Hemlock gone, all of it goes to Project Stardust. Thrawn, well, I guess he had a good relationship with Thrawn, kind of, but it's like he's gone by the end of Rebels. And really, it's like, you can kind of track it as like Tarkin's rise to power until he blows up on the Death Star. And then that just leaves the Emperor and Vader. But that's what I really love about this series and its villains. Hemlock in particular, really great villain, top tier. Yeah. I am a Rampart defender. I liked Rampart from season 1, and I think I really enjoyed seeing him come back in season 3, because we just don't see the early villains reappear in a lot of these shows. Once they're gone, they're gone. It's like, okay, now Thrawn's the big bad.
That Imperial guy in Rebels who gets demoted because that he screws up something as like the probably the Y-wing factory or something like that.
He shows up, but I don't consider like a main villain like the
Sure.
Inquisitor or the second brother and seventh
Yeah.
sister.
Right.
But yeah, I really love that. But because I'll throw it to you, Matthew. What did you think of our villains for this
Well,
series?
just thinking, yeah, Hemlock makes himself indispensable because he latches on to Project Necromancer and says, "I'm doing this thing that Sheev thinks is the most important thing ever, and so I'm the guy, almost more important than Tarkin to some extent." And in the one hand, it's true. He actually is like probably really literally says nothing more important. I know we're gonna get to that in a bit, but nothing more important to the future of this empire or whatever the line is. And so Hemlock's the guy who understands it and protects it all and guards it from anyone else's hands. So the least expendable to a point. But then yeah, his ability to be very cold and calculating, very imperial, except not in the same way as I don't know the usual imperial characters we see, and not even the buffoons, right? The career politicians, but he's just the delivery of the actor is just very, very dark and slow and calm, unlike other Imperials. Almost like Thrawn in that way, like the whole vibe of the vault itself, the way Kevin Kiner has the slow, eerie music, and we're sitting there watching these kids being taken captive, and who's this psychopath who thinks that that's a good idea? Well, it's Palpatine, but it's also this Hemlock guy. So that, Rampart. Interestingly, like I was saying, I think a few weeks ago, he could get annoying. I was worried he'd get just the same shtick over and over again, but then he reluctantly has to help the Bad Batch because he's stuck with them. I thought that was just interesting. Have this dose of realism, but also cynicism about everything. That kind of archetype filled that void a little bit. Filled that hole a little bit to be a counterpoint to the rest of the Bad Batch to say, no, actually, we're hopeful. We're going to go forward in this plan, and not simply in our abilities, but you have this note here. It sticks with this theme of family and team. That is what helps them escape. And Rampart can't see that because he's isolated and alone himself in this very isolating empire. And again, going back how Crosshair goes from that back to the team. So yeah, the villains definitely serve as a really effective counterpoint, really push the story forward. Hemlock, really pushing everything with Tantus and with Omega, and being a real threat to Omega, who she has to then overcome by herself with the help of the team, but really within herself. And it's really effective.
Omar, what about you? What do you think of our villains?
First, I think you guys both covered a lot of what I thought, but I will say I just want to highlight that Rampart has another one of my favorite scenes in that finale, and that is with Nala Se at the very end, where she is able to destroy all of her research along with Rampart.
Moment. Yeah.
Wonderful moment. Probably one of my favorite ways a villain has been taken out. Yeah, any hope of like, oh, maybe Rampart's going to do the right thing was thrown out the window, and it tracks. I think it certainly tracks with exactly the type of character that he was. I love the scene earlier where he was talking to Hemlock, and it almost felt like who can out evil the other in that conversation. It was a pretty fun conversation there. But yeah, no, that scene was excellent. Really, really great way to say goodbye to both characters, as well as connect to Project Necromancer, and just a really good tie-in for that. In general, about the villains, I think it's fair to say that maybe the central villain of the Bad Batch in general is just the Empire and how it just slowly comes to be throughout the show. You know, from the very beginning to the laws that they started putting in place, to the slow decline of the clones and using of the Imperial Stormtrooper. Like there's these singular moments that you can see where just Republic life and governance just slowly started to evolve into what we know as the Empire in general. And I would say that that could be like a really uh, that's probably who I would say is the main villain of uh, the Bad Batch, which is just this slow, steady change. Of course, we have Hemlock. Of course, we have Rampart. I always thought that the exchanging out for Rampart to Hemlock was to again prove to the point that everyone is expendable, and that even whoever the main bad guy of the day is going to be, it doesn't matter. The Empire will just throw away one and give you a new one, kind of thing. But of course, I do think Hemlock was a very interesting villain with a very unique performance that I really enjoyed a lot. I loved the hand, the kind of implication that maybe he himself was experimenting on himself in kind of this wild, crazy scientist kind of way. It's kind of the same hand that Crosshair was being affected by as well. So yeah, I loved it. I loved the villains a lot. But that's pretty much what I have to say.
Yeah.
About that. Yeah.
I want to jump in. You know, I love talking about ideas and story. I'm also a ship nerd, and ships also tell story. In that moment,
Oh, yes.
Venators, boom, ISD.
Yes.
Omar, you're talking about the Empire slowly
Yeah.
coming to be.
Oh my
It's
God.
there. It's the in this show. I mean, I always love seeing the transition, right? That transition from clones into stormtroopers, like you mentioned. Yeah, this transition from, I mean, this thing that sometimes gets called a Jedi cruiser, a Venator class Star Destroyer.
Right.
This is the Imperial Star Destroyer, capital T, Star Destroyer. Obviously, looks a little different here and there, but the shape of the basic shape of it recognizable since 1977, right? That second shot, the second ship that comes in, and so
Oh yeah.
yeah, that we're there, and it's Tarkin's ship, right? And
Of course.
everything that Tarkin, like you're saying, represents in terms of Project Stardust and the Death Star, and the Empire getting to its height, and what the kinds of characters, like Hemlock, Tarkin has that sense of calm foreboding. I don't care about anything or anyone. I'm just here to win. and Hemlock has that a little bit too, but a little weirder. Of course, Rampart has kind of the strong show of strength aspect to Tarkin, and so it's effective that Tarkin is there at the end to clean up the spoils, if you will.
No, you're right. Even in season 2 finale, one of the big reasons the Bad Batch mission goes south is because Saw Gerrera's there. He wants to blow up Tarkin and the the bureaucrat military people. And Tech's like, well, you can't do that, but they're just going to replace them with the other people. And there is a rightness in what Tech's saying, because like, yeah, I mean, we can talk about the individualism in the system and how individuals are important to a certain extent, and I would have that argument. But at least when Star Wars and the Empire is concerned, yeah, you can blow up every Grand Admiral, take out Thrawn. That will have some effect, of course, but at the end of the day, there's only one person that needs to get blown up, and that's the Emperor.
Right.
That's only when the Emperor is blown up, although he ships himself to Exegol. That's when the Empire goes downhill. That's when it truly no longer can function. You can blow up the Moffs, the troopers, even Darth Vader, even Saint Pestage, even Mas Amedda. But as long as the Emperor's alive, he can just replace them all and keep it functioning to a degree. So don't blow them up. Boom. How rude. I needed to get that in there because we've been talking about explosions. I love that line. So, one of the big plot threads throughout this whole show was, of course, Project Necromancer. I'll get into that in a bit because I have a whole thing that we can. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Palpatine releasing himself. in a second. But I want to, and I'm going to throw this to you, Omar, because you're a big fan of the Star Wars multimedia and that how this all kind of works. I do wonder if like Bad Batch, I think, is a very interesting show in that it's a show that is before a bunch of other stuff from an out of in a universe perspective, but was made after a bunch of other stuff. So I do wonder, what are your kind of thoughts on the balance between? Okay, so like I mean, I don't know if you saw the episode with Wolf and Dominic's perspective of like, there's this big emotional thing with Wolf, and you know,
it only works because of Rebels.
yeah, it only works. It only works because we saw Rebels. But there will be people who watch Star Wars in chronological order. In the same way, I feel like with Project Necromancer, because on the one hand, and I'll get to my thoughts on Project Necromancer in a hot second. Because on the one hand, yes, there is a lot of teasing with Project Necromancer. Rampart knows more than the audience does after a certain point, and we, the audience, know. But at the same time, we who have been watching out of order know certain things. Of course, like we, the audience who saw Rise of Skywalker first, know what Palpatine might be looking at when he looking at those tubes and Necromancer and M count and all that. So I guess my question is, and my rambly question, Omar, is like kind of what are your thoughts on kind of finding that balance between, I guess, the chronological audience and the release order audience, and kind of how creators should kind of handle that in a multimedia, we jump all over the place, a prequel being made 20 years later after a bunch of stuff franchise like Star Wars is?
Gosh, that's a hard question because I don't truly know I know the answer. I could only speak to the idea of what it is and what it has kind of accomplished thus far. Transmedia storytelling, at least as far as Star Wars is concerned, I feel like it looks at the story in two certain ways. And one, as we've established, the chronological way. So if this story is going to take place in between these two stories, what's going to be there to kind of thread the stories together in a specific way, while also giving the creative, free reign to just tell a good, solid individual story. And yeah, so like that's the first way that I think is kind of, and that's where we have the Bad Batch and the slow turn from the Republic to the Empire. All these moments that we highlighted already. The destruction of the Camino in Homeworld, or the city. Elements like that really kind of focus on like, oh, you're familiar with this from the previous entry in the chronological timeline. Here's what's going to happen now, and here's how it's going to evolve to what you're able to see in A New Hope and the original trilogy. But on the other hand, the other way that a transmedia story and like is kind of handled is how is each of these stories proximity to their release dates, with each other. So like Project Necromancer story only makes sense to us because The Rise of Skywalker released 4 years prior. That is a story that is still fresh in our minds, and I'm willing to bet that the Bad Batch was in production, or at least in some way in production, back when The Rise of Skywalker was being finished. And so there was probably an initiative behind the scenes to push the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian to have these ties into The Rise of Skywalker in a very loose way that doesn't step on any creative's toes, clearly. That's why I think Bad Batch kind of wraps up in a pretty satisfying way. Like says, okay, Project Necromancer's done. We're going to move on to Stardust. And that's why the Mandalorian, kind of ends a certain way where it's like, okay, this was Gideon's whole thing, but it could have ties to the previous project that was Project Necromancer and its prior incarnation on Tantus. So again, yeah, I'm kind of just talking right now about like what transmedia is, and
it's a great example of it, though.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's a great example of it, though.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's two different things: chronological and very real world release order of things. And so that's kind of how I think Star Wars has handled itself, and I think it's going to continue to handle itself to kind of find a balance between these two different ways to experience the Star Wars story. It's ultimately always going to be a big old tapestry of connections, and that's one of my favorite parts about Star Wars. I do love the connections. I know it gets harped on a lot in terms of like meaningless callbacks. But I think when it's interwoven in a really smart way, it enhances both stories that are connected.
I'll
Yeah.
give one more Palpatine example.
Yeah.
About how transmedia and Star Wars kind of affects each other, which is weirdly kind of the other "I am your father" moment in a weird way, and that is Palpatine's the Sith Lord. Because obviously, if you're watching Release Order, we all know Palpatine being the Sith Lord,
Yeah.
but there are lots of stories and 7 seasons of Clone Wars where it's like, oh, it's just Palpatine, part of the team. He's helping out Anakin and the gang fighting the Seppies. But
What a
like,
great Chancellor.
we know, but obviously there is a segment of audience that like saw Revenge of the Sith, like, nope, that's gonna be the Sith Lord. We know already. We've seen the movies, but obviously there will be a group of people who are watching in chronological order. So it's like, how do you keep the secret when it almost there is like a half of the audience that might know? So again, it's sort of like, how smirky can you make Palpatine for like, what's going on here with this guy?
Yeah, I will say with Bad Batch and Project Necromancer, it definitely did preserve the mystery even for us really well. It, we speculated, what's Omega? Why? How is she Omega? How is she the end of what process? Right? Why is that her name? Why is the Empire so keen on her coming back? Why? What's happening with as now say I mix the Kaminoans up all the time.
You're right.
Yeah, I got it right this time. There we go. Why is Nala say so fond of her, protective of her, beyond simply that she's a kid who's around? And so it only, we speculated it, but they only confirm it for us at the end. Those of us who have a good guess. We don't actually know for sure that Necromancer is absolutely connected to Grogu and Palpatine. We just think, the name Necromancer. So dark arts cloning, midi-chlorian count, all that stuff. Ray Carson, the adaptation, all that. We all know that stuff. I think for those who maybe don't know, for this is maybe their first Star Wars or whatever, I think the mystery is even more of a mystery. It's more suspenseful. Uphold it even more.
Right.
And what's fascinating about this show as a whole, and this is a wider comment, it actually refuses to give us some of the speculations. What Dom was saying about some of the threads that it left open that it didn't tie up at all. Like Ventress just shows up once and then she's gone, even though that was a huge moment from the trailer.
Right.
Again, Tech is another example of we speculated. All of us, we all had the cold take. We all did. And we can see it make sense, but it just didn't do it. Just didn't do that. And then what Omega and the crew end up doing in the intervening years between when the show ends and the epilogue, the story proper ends and the epilogue. So the same thing with Necromancer. It doesn't even fully explain what that is.
Right.
Again, and it doesn't need to. And that's the important thing is it's simply a storytelling device. It is simply a platform to threaten Omega, to make sure why the Empire wants her, why the Empire wants to capture her, so that again it's this obstacle for her to overcome. Yet at the same time, they do a great job showing that the reason the Empire wants her for Project Necromancer is part of how she's able to escape and find her own path.
Right.
Yeah,
that she's force sensitive. That she's stuck into that cell, into the vault with the kids. I mean, they kind of help with the escape a little bit, but her sensitivity to animals, her ability to connect with them a little bit, that all that, it really serves the character, so that that's what casual viewers will still be dragged along with in a good way, like carried along with, alongside, of course, all of us being carried along with the character and the fun lore and the fun kind of thoughts about hearing the word midi-chlorian in another thing that isn't the Phantom Menace. Anyway.
And I think that the show does a really good job of showing that there's a wider story going on
Yeah.
and that there are bigger things happening.
Mhm.
But then eventually, this is something I think Rebels did a little bit too. But then eventually, kind of like honing back in, like reining it back in. It's like, okay, time to focus just on how does this affect the batch.
Yeah.
Right.
This is. But now I will finally go into my theory of what Project Necromancer is, because
go.
even if the show doesn't have one, I do. Oh, Omar, were you gonna say something first?
No, not at all. Go ahead.
All right. So I think I figured out how the threads of Project Necromancer tie throughout the whole saga.
Mhm.
Because I think that the project itself is about a certain type of science, but everyone's using the science for a different thing.
Mhm.
So I think Project Necromancer, the science of Project Necromancer is clone a force sensitive and ensure that their force sensitivity remains intact. So any force sensitive that gets cloned, make sure that they stay 100% the same force sensitive as the original copy. Because when you clone a force sensitive, their force sensitivity is not going to be the same.
Right.
So if you did clone a Palpatine clone and then just brought it to life, it's not going to have the same sort of force powers that OG Palpatine has.
Like
That-
Rey's father, I forget his Dathan.
Yeah, exactly. Like Dathan. That's the problem. So obviously that's the science.
Mhm.
But I think the different Imperial factions we've seen are using that for a somewhat different purpose. Palpatine and Hemlock, I think, are using it for the purpose we see in Rise of Skywalker, which is Palpatine wants a clone of himself, so he can then put himself in a clone body and live forever, immortality, hallelujah. Dark side, hallelujah. Plagueis, hallelujah. Gideon is using that science to make a clone army of himself with force powers. I think that's what I think he said in Mando season finale. It's been a while since I watched it. But now Hux is also using Project Necromancer for something, and they must have found the file project somewhere because they know the name. But I don't think it's to bring back Palpatine because no one's acting like Palpatine's alive, and I'm going off the Rise of Skywalker
Is
novel here for a
Armitage or
second.
Brendel? Armitage.
This is Brendel. No, Brendel.
Yeah.
Brendel. Hux Jr. is still a kid.
Okay.
Little psycho kid.
Yeah.
But Brendel Hux is using this for something else. So I think what Brendel Hux and Papa Hux and Pelion and the Shadow Council are doing is they are trying to clone a force sensitive. And I think they're going to use that force sensitive to be the new leader of the Empire. Now, I don't think they're cloning Palpatine because I don't know how many of these people know Palpatine was even a force sensitive. That wasn't something Palpatine ever advertised. He didn't care if you knew, but at the same time, he wasn't going like, yeah, I'm a Sith Lord, it's a really cool life. Get to blast people with lasers. So my hypothesis, my theory, this is where I think this is just a little Mandoverse speculation, is I think the Imperial Remnant and Hux Sr. might be trying to clone Vader and see if they can get a Vader clone to be their new Imperial leader, because like real life Nazis, they're all into that genetic superiority, super race kind of deal. So that is my hot take on how Project Necromancer has been used throughout the saga. And then obviously by the time we get to Rise of Skywalker, we see the original purpose of clone Palpatine and his decaying force, and he needs to die to juice him back up. But Omar, I'm going to throw it to you. What are your thoughts on my theory?
So their first thought was to clone Anakin hot-headed Skywalker to run the Empire. I don't know.
Or be
do
a
you
puppet.
think-
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Do you think this could eventually end up being what is Snoke? Like this could be like just like
Maybe.
their accidental creation of what Snoke is? Because
Maybe.
yeah. Like I like the theory though. I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't know about the wanting to clone Darth Vader. I think that's certainly interesting. I think you are right though that they do want to create some kind of leader for the empire that they have. I think that makes sense so far from the material that we've gotten. My only question, just in general, for Project Necromancer and even in its relationship with the Bad Batch, is what exactly was the breakthrough with Omega? Like, was it basically so? Like, I guess this is getting into the science now,
Sure.
but like when they're literally extracting the blood, are they trying to clone? Like they'll clone the blood and they'll see a pretty huge dip in the midichlorian count on that cloned blood, and maybe when they get Omega's blood and they clone the blood, they'll see that the midichlorian count maintained. Is that what I assume is going on? Again, it's always been very vague in the show.
Oh.
So what do you think? What do
Okay,
you
I swear they probably explained it. Something about her blood is a binder, so it
It's a
binds the
binder, yeah.
midichlorians. I almost took it as like almost a transfusion situation where it's like
right.
trying to transfuse your midichlorians. Like you need type A blood. Make sure it sticks. This
Interesting. Okay.
Omega's got type midichlorian blood. It makes you fuse it in so it's the midichlorians stick in.
So it's a type of blood that is able to maintain the midichlorian count in others' bloods.
That's the vibe I get. I'm sure it's in the show, and this is one of those situations where if we rewatch it 1,000 more times, I think we could figure it out.
On the next rewatch, I'll pay
Unless
more
they
attention
haven't
to
actually
that.
answered, because I mean, I don't know. I thought they were just testing her.
Right.
I mean,
right.
there's the whole thing about the matching. I don't know, but
Yeah. It's something that I wonder. Yeah, on rewatch, I'm gonna try to really focus in on what exactly is going on with. I think Project Necromancer, even in the Mandalorian, it's very much hidden away to the corner of something that exists, but we don't have too much of the details going on. So, I'm all for the speculation of this kind. Bring on a clone Vader. I'm curious to see what that looks. I mean, that's gonna be Anakin. It's gonna be an adult Anakin walking around and being pouty. It's gonna be great.
More Hayden.
that'd be
More
interesting
Hayden.
story-wise.
More Hayden, the better.
I mean, also, we're talking Heir of the Empire. We got Mount Tantus.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this.
Maybe.
Mr. Skywalker's running around.
Yeah, given those factors,
They
all of
gotta
a sudden
see
it's much more
somebody's-
plausible.
Now, in comics, guess where the hand is?
It's
Onyx.
with it's an
You
exegol.
know,
It's an
so-
exegol. Yeah.
That
Who
would-
knows? But
It
I
would
don't
be
know.
interesting.
I don't know.
Are we
I
gonna get
hope-
Luke?
I
Nah,
hope they're trying to do that, but I hope they're not successful. I hope, maybe if anything, that seems to be what the Snoke thing is. I mean, we know Snoke is part of like a way station on the way
Right.
to Palpatine's return. Maybe with Hux, what Hux and especially what Hux is trying to do in the Shadow Council, they're accidentally creating the way station when they think they're actually creating the thing. If we're going with Joel's theory, I will say though, for Pelion, there's only one
It's true.
worthy leader. And
That is true.
He's not a clone. He's a
Right.
chiss.
I will be interested to get a bit more on Pelion's thoughts because he's the one who's like and provide comment on Hook because enough time to deliver on Project Necromancer. So he's aware this is going on. It doesn't sound like he's like, we shouldn't use Project Necromancer. He's just saying Ron's going to herald in the return of our military. I mean, maybe he secretly does, but he doesn't want to make waves right now. And then when Thrawn comes back, he's like, hey, they're doing this thing. Stop them, Thrawn.
Thrawn is back, and he's on a planet with a lot of dark hearts.
That's true. That's true. But I'll throw this question to you, Matthew, in terms of like, speculation aside, because I know we don't really do a lot of speculation, but more like themes. I mean, if you want to get into speculation too, that's fine. But this is more your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Themes. There is a really interesting, and it did start with Rise of Skywalker, and I think Bad Batch and a bit of Mando is really, really sticking to it, and Ahsoka as well. Is you see the Empire just trying to make these Force sensitives, if that's what they're doing, which I think it is to a certain extent, through genetics and manipulation and eugenics, and then very dark side, and yet especially like Ahsoka, we see Sabine, who's like who Yang said, your M count sucks. It's like, really, you can't use the Force. You have like the lowest M count ever. You couldn't move the cup if you tried. And then at the end we see Sabine Force take her lightsaber. I think it's the lightsaber. I forget what
she pushes Ezra onto the Star Destroyer, onto the
Chimera. So I really am loving, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this dichotomy of like, here we have Sabine, even a little bit of Hera. It's like they're really tapping into the Force because they're trying. Meanwhile the Emperor's like, more blood needles, kidnap children, start taking their blood samples. So any thoughts on that?
That's a great point. That's to point out that contrast, just the diametric divergence in approach here, right? That Yeah, I mean, and it reminds me of a certain character we referenced about an hour and a half ago. A certain Mr. Hago Damask, or Amanda Stenberg's character, who knows what.
Wink.
But clearly, at least the Legends version,
Mhm.
this guy who, he's trying to control life and trying to, use science. It's funny, the Empire is incredibly technocratic, and that here they are being technocratic about this great mystery of the galaxy,
Mhm.
and really trying to put it all in a box and orderly and scientific tests and blood transfusions, and maybe some weird spells over a little bowl of water or whatever, whatever it is they end up doing there too. But it's a great point in that both Omega and Sabine and Hera in that beautiful moment with Jason, they're open, like I was saying before, with Ray and the Force healing and Barriss, bring it all together here.
Mhm.
They're open to what I'm kind of glibly saying what the story needs, but that's the funny thing about Star Wars is there's this way of saying what the story needs. No, it's not just some crass thing. It's the Force moving the actual story, really moving it's the journals of the wills in a way, right? That whole idea. The Force is moving circumstances so that heroic choices
Mhm.
turn out to be the ones that work out well. And the lesson of George Lucas, whatever that is. And so the Force will reward those who seek to do the best they can in the moment, and to submit to the greater good, and to find themselves in that greater good, not to lose themselves. And that's where the critique of, say, the Jedi and critique of the light, and why people think, oh, we got to tap into the dark side because that's the only way for me to find myself and center myself. No, that's another way of serving the light, is everyone matters, including ourselves. And so for Omega, I mean, it's a little different with Omega than Sabine,
Okay.
because we know Omega's M count is up, whereas we know Sabine's, like Ho Yang says, right, effectively, but it's interesting, he uses different language, used in terms of natural skill and talent, which is a more a better way of saying what an M count means in the context of actually making choices and taking actions, what you're actually physically capable of doing. Sabine, not so much able. Omega, she hasn't been trained to tap into it. She doesn't believe it herself. She doesn't know it because she hasn't been grown up in the environment to know it, and probably was kept secret from her.
Right.
But it's a really, again, to playing up that counterpoint, playing up that choice that she makes not to go along. I mean, she never was going to,
Mhm.
but if she had the inhibitor chip and if it was going to work,
Mhm.
then the good or just indoctrinated for the good soldier to follow orders.
Right.
Learning actually, good soldiers don't just follow orders. Good soldiers have a sense of why they're fighting what they're fighting for, and
Exactly.
to hopefully not, well, to the point we've made before, but hopefully jump on your last point there.
Right.
That she at the very end, we know in our minds, we know, she has this potential Force sensitivity. Maybe she has been training with Ventress this whole time, but she goes off and is a skilled pilot for the rebellion. And I mean, that's all. I mean, there's another thing. I mean, what I'm thinking is she connecting with Hera, because like we saw in season 2, she did. At this point, Hera is definitely part of the rebellion.
Oh, I hope they're friends. I hope they're buddies.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they are. They've got.
Yeah,
Oh
for
yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah. They gotta be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to get getting late, and I don't want to go too far. But you're right. I think natural talent is the nicer way to say it, because but I don't think. I think where the Empire sees eugenic blood samples, I think, like, at worst, the Jedi kind of see, like, oh, Omega is a naturally talented Force sensitive. Of course, we're going to take her in.
Mhm.
No questions asked. She can lift the rocks as a baby just by looking at them. While someone like Sabine, it's like, Sabine's got to work a little harder to get that to work. She could do
Yeah.
it, but I think the Jedi of old sometimes, if they
Mhm.
get if they get a little too technical, it's like, do we really want to put her into the temple? We got to feed her, and
Yeah.
like, you can stay here.
And I want to jump in with one last thought. There is,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
it's interesting to say, Omega all this time, her whole life
Mhm.
is, I think, part of Project Necromancer, right? She's the goal that Palpatine wanted, this outcome,
Mm-hmm.
and she still transcends that. She's still, because of the influence of Hunter and Wrecker and
Right.
Nalase and
Right.
people she comes to meet,
Mhm.
she says, no, this is not who I am. Almost again, the pinnacle of all the clones, right? The clone
Right.
army exists for Palpatine to become the Emperor. But at the end, they're all able to go to Pantora or wherever they want.
Mm-hmm.
She's able to be her own person, even though she's meant to be the agent of Palpatine's eternal authority, eternal dominance, eternal life,
Mm-hmm.
controlling it. She's able to transcend that and be her own person.
This
And,
reminds me of something I saw on Twitter where someone said the clones are like Palpatine's greatest pawns, and yet it's also the clones who probably screwed Palpatine over the most with Project Necromancer. So that's why he's
Yeah.
all decayed
Oh,
and
yeah.
shriveled and trust. So it's like clones got the last laugh in the end with that guy.
They did.
I mean,
But
well, a clone of Palpatine
that's true.
gives birth, and Dathan and Miramir.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is okay. Okay, Omar. There we go. There's me saying, okay, there's something to Ray Palpatine there. I will admit that.
Yeah. There
Something
you
poetic
go.
about that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, you're right. It's Palpatine used clones to take over, and it was clones that kind of all led to his
Yeah.
destruction.
The
Full
daughter of the
circle.
clone
Full
leads to
circle. There you
destruction.
go.
Full
Yeah.
circle. But yeah, to kind of wrap up this discussion, 'cause we are running a little on the late side. I'll just say, and then we can talk a little maybe about the epilogue in the future and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is the end of the Bad Batch to me very much feels like the end of an epoch of Star Wars. I that really started in 2020. Really, like,
Mhm.
I do feel like we are, and I've talked about this with you, Matthew, a lot of times.
Mm.
We are ending an era, right? Like, yes, we're still like the streaming kind of dwindling down a little bit. I hope, and I'm sure Acolyte will get multiple seasons, but same time, it's like probably gonna be one streaming show, and Mandalorian gonna be movies now and stuff like that. Probably Ahsoka season 2. Um, High Republic's ending next year. Well, that's gonna be sad. Obviously, we're probably gonna see more of the era, but the
There's
initiative.
always gonna be books and stuff.
Oh yeah. But the initiative itself is coming to an end. And even the comics, we're
Yeah.
we're ending the post Empire era now, maybe
Yeah, we
in
are.
a couple of months. And I feel like the end of Bad Batch is just another one of those things that, like, a bunch of stuff started around the 2020, 2021 era.
Yeah.
And now a bunch of this is kind of coming to a close. Yeah, we're gonna still have a little bit of stragglers and Ahsoka season 2 and Acolytes kind of going on, and Andor's next year. But I feel like just in general, the era that started with that is winding down as we transition to something else. But Omar, I'll toss it to you. Have you been feeling that? Am I the only one feeling that?
No, I completely agree. I actually think that you could call this like era 2 of what's going on with the new canon, or the buyout of Disney kind of was year 0, and era 1 was the main focus was the sequel trilogy. Everything was kind of built up to that.
Mm.
We had Rebels, we had Resistance, we had the anthology film experiment. And era 2 was everything after that. Kind of, unfortunately, was dampened by the existence of the COVID virus, and how they had to kind of swivel a little bit to, really focusing in on the Disney shows, which I think they were going to do anyway. I think that was a viable, like what the direction they were going with anyway. But yeah, I definitely agree. There is kind of an ending of things that I'm now curious what the next 5 years of Star Wars is going to look like after 2025 specifically, like up until 2030, which is crazy to think about. But
Yeah.
that is kind of the next. Like, I wonder where we're gonna pivot to now that we have movies coming up. So, and I think that's probably probably a return to the movies is where it's gonna kind of focus in on. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, absolutely. If I could just
Oh yeah.
I wanted to kind of go off of a little bit on the clone kind of ending thing with
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
the story of the clones. I think is a tragedy. It's just
Mhm.
full stop a tragedy that cannot be made up for in any sort of way. Like with what we saw in Kenobi, an unfortunate clone
Mm.
out in the streets, homeless, begging for money. It's a very sad situation that is reflective of like a lot of real world stories. They're
Veterans.
individuals who were tools for a greater empire that just tossed them away once they were done. And it's very evocative of like what's going on again, as you said, with Omega, and how it was just another tool for Project Necromancer, another tool to be used up and thrown away, because we all know that's how it was going to end up if Omega was going to fulfill her destiny that I'm sure Palpatine had in store.
Mhm.
So I always think back to this. When I was writing down some notes, I found a line from the Rebels finale of when Gregor is shot and he's dying. He says the line, "It was an honor to fight for something we chose," which
Yeah.
I swear, I think that line probably had something to do with what later became the Bad Batch. Like
Yeah.
I'm almost sure of it. Like the theme that is the central theme of the Bad Batch, and I think that's kind of what I alluded to earlier when I said how I love that the Bad Batch was coherently thematic in its messaging, and how amazing that very last scene was. It was just a perfect end, a perfect tie-in to what would be the line from Gregor. Is just the
Mm.
opportunity to choose what they fight for. It's what Omega ends up doing, fighting for the rebellion, and it's something that because the story of the clones is such a tragedy, we can only get catharsis from individual stories like
Mhm.
this, like with Gregor. And with the Bad Batch, that's where we can derive our catharsis from. Um, and it's almost in a perfect way with Omega, because she is the next generation now. She is the legacy of the clones, truly, that
Mhm.
fights for now the rebellion and for what's right. So yeah, that's pretty much my whole ending spiel in terms of
Mhm.
the Bad Batch. Great show, great amazing series. So,
I would now. I just kind of have this image of like if Omega was there fighting off Palpatine, she'd just go, "And I am all the clones."
exactly, she is all the clones.
So
She's all the Django clones at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, the clone. It's a tragedy. I think. I mean, I think we're going to get more stories of the role of clones in the rebellion, and that's going to be kind of a collective. I don't want to say the redemption, but response, undoing of the tragedy a little bit.
Okay,
We don't
you
want
think so?
to.
Okay.
We don't want to repeal the depths of it, right? That that my favorite film of all time really brings home, Revenge of the Sith
Right.
brings that home. But yeah, I do think so. Yeah, but there's also the fact that they were bred as this collective, and yeah, like you're saying, I think it does undo it a little bit in a good way. It like responds
Yeah.
to it
Yeah.
by
Absolutely.
them being the ones to fight with. Yeah, I mean them finding identity, and that's the thing, finding identity, not just individuality on their own, but actually personhood, communities, families to join and be part of. And yeah, like you're, I entirely agree. The genesis, the thematic genesis is let's have these clones, and they are clones. They don't necessarily look like Django. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily look like Tim Morrison, except the Black Series ones do a lot more. Um, but they are clones, and they're able to be more individualistic. They're enhanced clones. They have more uniqueness to them from each other, but they're able to come together, yeah, for a cause that they believe in. And
Right.
yeah, it was really well put. I do
It's
want to. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I was just gonna say it started with the choice to humanize the clones back in the Clone Wars,
Yeah.
and that's
Oh,
why
absolutely.
it was said in like interviews and whatnot from D. Bradley Baker how the Bad Batch is like the continuation of the Clone Wars. Less in a literal sense, but more in a continuation of the themes and ideas that was put forth like that. So
I mean, I think there is there is a direct literal story. To be
oh
told.
yeah, for sure.
And so, in terms of an era being over,
Mhm.
I think that story is now complete.
Yes.
I mean, again, we're going to see more. I think more stories of clones,
Mhm.
but
Oh, sure.
yeah, that part of the epilogue, it's sort of epilogue-ish with them going to Pantora. I mean, symbolically, those few groups of clones, but still,
Right.
In the Bad Batch and then Omega herself. In terms of it being an end of an era, I will say, all these shows were in development since 2015. Things have been planned out and sort of sketched out since 2015. So, and the reason I say that it comes to mind is for comics, especially, it is this 10-year arc that began in 2015, or I mean, like 2013, 2014. But the comics especially came out in 2015, and of course, Force Awakens. Yeah, and so yeah, to 2019 and to Solo and Rogue One. I don't know if the line is going to be as fine this time around. I think we're still going to get a lot more. We're still going to have some focus on shows more than we did. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. If there is a change of era, it is a bit more of a hybrid, a bit more.
I can see that.
Not to the same extent as Marvel, because they just realized they're just not capable of going to that hardcore 8 stories a year.
Right.
But maybe a film and a show at the same time.
Oh, I can
You
see that
know,
absolutely.
For sure.
And so if anything, and so it's going to kind of elide into that.
Yo, I
And then on the paper side, yeah, definitely comics. The era is done. This is an end of an era. Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, we've talked about this before. Um, they're going to do some kind of initiative like High Republic at some point that is going to feel epochal, but we don't know what that is. So yeah, that also does feel like something coming to an end.
It's gonna be what?
Epochal.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah.
As in, it's gonna. Yeah, I wonder if they planned. They earmarked 2025. This is when we're gonna end High Republic.
Right.
And
no, because remember, COVID has kind of delayed them by a
true
year.
2024, 2024, 2025.
Yeah, it's all. Yeah.
But I mean, also, next year, Joel, you were pointing out Revenge of the Sith at 20.
Oh yeah.
And this year we're having a Phantom Menace at 25 party in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree with you, Matthew. I would even say that if this is kind of my vibe, and I could be totally off base, that like in terms of like screen stuff, like my kind of guess, and this is just an educated guess, one ongoing animated series, maybe a streaming show,
like a live
at a movie, maybe
maybe a live action and then a movie.
Yeah, that's probably like maybe not the same live action show because they might be like one year the Acolyte, the other Ahsoka, but maybe. But I do definitely think that's probably. I do think we're gonna have at least another ongoing animated series, and of course, some Visions and some Tales thrown in there, into the mix. Probably my guess is like they're gonna switch to like next year's Visions, and then 2026 is Tales, and maybe another Vision to Tales, and back and forth.
But I mean, what about a longer thing?
Yeah. One
with the event, like the Ventress Omega thing.
Yeah. I think there will be that's what I said, an ongoing animated show as well.
And do we think? I mean, so here's the thing.
Okay.
So, because that's stylistically, and that's a cue in telling this continuous story, not just since 2015. I mean, 2017 we got the season 7 since 2008.
Yeah.
So I mean that I think they are gonna keep going and with that animated style. I could be wrong, but
they like to reuse the assets, so it's cheaper.
Yeah. I mean, in Tales of the Jedi or Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi, it looks so good.
They look amazing. They
really work so well. So
yeah.
Until they want to change it up and go more Rebel style or something completely different.
That's what I'm hoping. I am hoping for just a variety of styles. I really would appreciated,
Yeah.
you know, outside of just Visions right now, which is really, I love Visions, but
Mhm.
I'm really curious for Star Wars' next animated thing to be somewhat of a departure in some regard. I would really love to
Yeah.
see that. Not to say I dislike the animation of the, you know, Clone Wars and what they're going on here with the Bad Batch and
Mhm.
Tales of, but yeah, I think just with like character design, I'm really excited to see what could they do next.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful. I'm
I
hopeful of
mean,
something new. So
Young Jedi Adventures is a whole other style.
that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
So that I do think that they're going to continue Omega story or Omega story or with Ventress or who knows what,
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah.
that they're going to stick with this style because it helps establish that continuity, that connection. We have that connection, this visual connection.
Right.
Um,
That makes
but
sense.
yeah, that's why probably one of the reasons why they switched the style for Rebels is it's a different time period, a different story, and they brought characters back, but kind of establish a difference, a distinction. That's my guess. They'll stick with the style again because it works. They just know it so well too. But
It's cheaper.
Right.
But yeah, that's I'd be curious to see what the next show is. Who knows? Maybe it'll be total curveball. We don't know.
just like this one was. Just like this one.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, if anything, Bad Batch has kind of taught me it's like, and we've talked about this too, Matt. It's like, yeah, concept might not sound great, but hey, if you get the right creators, it could be something really special.
Or concept that sound appealing to me because it's not what
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's the subjective part, but yeah, definitely. It's sort of like, you know what? Show me what's next. I'm open to maybe anything at this point.
Right.
But I think with that, unless we have final saying, we should probably get wrapped up. This is
Omar, do you have any last thoughts?
yeah.
No, I loved the show. Bad Batch was amazing. It was a pleasure to talk Star Wars with everybody. What did we discuss? We discussed so much. Phantom Menace, Acolyte, Tales of, and Bad Batch. It was a really busy and great week of Star Wars, so I was really happy to be able to talk about it here with y'all. So
There you go.
And get ready, folks, because Acolyte's coming, and Matthew and I are gonna have to have some hard discussions on how the heck are we gonna handle that when
We're
that
sorting
comes.
it out. We're the structure and all that. Yeah, we'll sort it out.
We'll figure it
go.
out.
We got a good old Texan y'all. We have to get one.
howdy, y'all.
Y'all.
There we go. Yeah, that's great.
Love it.
Yeah, Omar, thanks so much for coming on. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at the Negotiator 95 on Twitter and TikTok, and then on YouTube you could just find me at the Negotiator. I have a lot of exciting things coming that have been in the works for a very long time now, but it's now ever closer because I have some help in the production of this one particular video that I'm excited to unveil soon. So yeah.
Looking forward to it. Joel, thanks again. Great conversation as always. I don't feel tired. 2.5 hours in, Joel. I don't.
Oh
feel
wow.
tired.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm
There we
glad.
go. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID 2021 again, JID 2021 on Twitter, or of course I use a lot of the time the at Ion Cannon Pod at EYEONCANONPOD. So follow us there. And I didn't plug it at the beginning. I want to plug it now. Check out Culture Slate's sketched out Gen Wars, the Star Wars episode, which I had a big hand in writing. Great episode. Go watch it, please. Please watch it. We need all the views we can. Really excited to have finally have that out. Go see it. It's great.
Yeah, it's a fun show. Looking forward to more episodes. More of those kind of that, like it's like fans gather around. It's like a podcast, but not. It's funny. There we go. You can follow me on Twitter at NEUG485, Instagram and Threads, MNEUG1138, at Ion Cannon Pod. Tractor Beam coming up this Wednesday. We got Free Comic Book Day, Star Wars, and got the thumbs up there. Free Comic Book Day, Star Wars and Vader. Free Comic Book Day, Young Jedi Adventures. Insider Short, keeping up with the Adrons. Vader number 46, yeah, he's going to Exegol. I think High Republic number 7. It's gonna be a doozy because books that came out on Saturday, books came out on Wednesday, books that a magazine I got in last Wednesday. Lots of stories, so check that out. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. And on that note, please do subscribe to the channel, like all our socials at Iron Canon Pod and at the SWU. Please do like this video, give it a share. Also, wherever you're watching, the comments section ain't going anywhere. Let us know what you thought of. What are we talking about? What did all we talk about? We talked about the Phantom Menace. I can't remember.
Acolyte, Tales of,
Like,
and
let's
the
scroll up
Bad
to my
Batch.
notes.
So
Yeah,
much,
all those
talked so
stuff.
much Star Wars today.
If there's anything you thought you were completely off base and completely wrong about, let us know. If you thought you like stuff you liked, what things you thought. What do you think of the Bad Batch? You know, all the other stuff we chatted about. Please do let us know down below.
Ah,
So much.
Next week we're gonna do another deep dive. We're getting another guest on. We're talking about all of that, about that New Republic.
New Republic thingy.
Yeah, because we got an even more New Republic just this past Saturday. We're gonna talk about the New Republic some more. Its politics and different things. I'm not quite sure. We'll find that out. So look for that right here, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Underworld channel, etc., etc. Also, check out the flagship, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on Thursday. They will be talking about Tales of the Empire. I'm pretty darn sure they talked about Bad Batch last week because they do it after the episode comes out, unlike us. So that's another thing. We're going to be doing it long after it'll that's something. Monday, it'll give us time to think about it and time to work on the Acolyte. We'll do it. We'll get there. We're making the jump to the Podcastariat for the Acolyte because it's in the High Republic and we are the home for the High Republic at the Star Wars Underworld
Yes.
YouTube channel. Not like anyone else can't talk about High Republic, just that we do. So there we go. Yeah. So, but next week we're not talking about the High Republic. We're talking about the New Republic. Come check us out. Come join us. Come chat away. But until then, Joel, Omar, let's blow this thing and head home.